Welcome to Rochford District Council's remote council meeting of the 14th of July 2020, and a warm welcome to anybody watching this via the live stream. I shall now take item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. We have received apologies from Councillor Mrs. Diane Hoy, and I believe there's no one else. Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the annual meeting held on the 9th of July 2020. Members, are you happy for me to sign in due course the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 9th of July? I will assume agreement unless anyone clicks on the raise hand icon.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by hash.
Councillor Michael Hoy.
Oh, thank you. I'm playing around with the minute there. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've just got a concern around the second paragraph on the second page of the minutes.
Participant ID followed by hash.
Sorry, someone has.
Just press hash to continue.
That isn't me. That noise.
Members,
I think.
whilst you're speaking, can you go on mute, please?
Which is confusing me a bit. On the minutes, I'm just getting them up again. Of the 9th of July, second paragraph on page 3, which is what Councillor Steptoe said. I do believe, for fullness and completeness, that it should include the statement he made regarding bullying, intimidation and control. This is in the public domain. It is on the front page of yesterday's Echo. I think it looks like we as a council are trying to cover it up if we do not include this. I know it may be uncomfortable, but I think it just should be included.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman, your lips are moving, but no sound is coming out.
Sorry, Councillor Hoy, my apologies.
Also, Chairman, Councillor Burton has lost audio as well.
Okay, bear with us for that. Let me answer this question first. The minutes are purely a summary of the annual council and do not go into great detail with regards to matters said. It's purely a brief summary of the matters discussed. Okay. Councillor Mrs. Mason. Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm afraid my internet isn't brilliant, so you'll have to bear with me if it appears a little slow.
We will do so.
Rather than being patient. I echo what Councillor Mr. Hoy has said. A brief summary, yes, but you haven't put a brief summary in there. There's a comprehensive report on the annual council. There's a whole page, and yet something very significant that has been missed out. And I don't think that editing the minutes is correct in this way. And I would second Councillor Hoy's request that the remarks made are recorded. Secondly, as a matter of fact, the minutes are incorrect. The apologies for absence were received from Councillor, and then it says start typing text. There were apologies, they were given and they've not been recorded. Councillor Tony, Mrs. Carter was one, Councillor Mrs. Hoy was another, and I'm sure the other members will be able to enlighten you about the other members that you've missed out of the minutes. But in the meantime, as I say, Councillor Hoy and myself have requested formally that the minutes include the comments made by Councillor Steptoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Mason. I'll repeat what I've said to Councillor Hoy, and I would emphasise that the speeches of Councillors Wootton and Steptoe are summaries of thanks for their past year. With regards to the apologies, they will be amended. So thank you for your comments.
Chairman, point of order. Councillor Chris Stanley has not been allowed into the meeting yet, please.
He will be.
He has, but he's just slow getting in there. I don't know who that is.
He has been allowed in, Councillor Newport. Members, then I see no other hand icons.
Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Newport has had his hand.
He's already spoken. Councillor Newport, do you wish to speak again?
No, Chairman. Sorry, I've put my hand down now. Thank you.
Members, could I ask you to mute your microphones, please, when not speaking? Thank you. Members, somebody has joined by telephone. We're not sure who that is. Could they please declare themselves?
It's me.
Councillor Burton, is it you? It is Councillor Burton. Thank you, Councillor Burton.
You're muted, Chairman.
Members, apart from the amendments that I've identified, I will sign in due course the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 9th of June.
On a point of order, Chairman, don't we vote on this?
I've already explained.
Muted again.
Chairman, again, I can see your mouth moving, but no words are coming out.
Yeah. We need to check whether or not
Councillor Hoy, did you move a motion?
you're on mute. Can you repeat your motion?
Could you, if you did, could you repeat it, please?
Didn't hear a word you were saying, Chairman.
Sorry, I think the sound is very bad tonight for some reason, all round. Yes, I moved a motion to change the second paragraph to include the word "ing" more fully. That Councillor Steptoe also indicated that there was bullying, intimidation and control.
Okay.
And for completeness, this should be included. Otherwise, we could be accused of covering up these allegations.
Well, if we're going to do that, we can.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Hoy, do you have a seconder?
Yes, I think Councillor Mrs. Mason was seconding that.
Councillor Mrs. Mason, did you second that?
Yes, I did, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Members, you've all heard the motion as put forward by Councillor Hoy, seconded by Councillor Mrs. Mason. I shall ask for a vote of either the roll call. If you can indicate whether you wish to have a recorded vote or you're for, against or abstain.
Hold on.
I shall continue with the roll call, members. Councillor Mrs Belton.
Against.
Do you wish to have a recorded vote?
Apologies, no recorded vote.
Councillor Burton.
Councillor Burton,
Councillor Burton, can you hear me? He can't hear me.
ask him if does he want a recorded vote?
Do you want a recorded vote? And are you for the motion?
No recorded vote.
And are you for the motion? Okay,
No,
thank you.
no.
That's 2 noes. Councillor Cannell.
No recorded votes, but for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Carter.
Yeah, no recorded vote against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Carter.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Recorded vote, please, and for. Thank you.
Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote and against the motion. Councillor Efty.
No recorded votes and against the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Eaves.
Recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Gooding.
No recorded vote and against the motion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelwood.
He's not in the meeting.
Councillor Hookway.
For a recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
For a recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hudson.
I don't require a recorded vote. I'm against the motion.
Councillor Ionu.
No recorded vote, and I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Lucas Gill.
No to a recorded vote and against the motion.
Councillor Mrs Lumley.
No and against.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, for the recorded vote and for the motion for transparency. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
No for the recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Merrick.
No and against.
Thank you. Councillor Milne.
No and against.
Councillor Newport.
For a recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Pavlin.
No and against.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and against.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No recorded vote and against the motion.
Councillor Mr Shaw.
No recorded vote against the motion.
Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote against.
Councillor Sperring.
No recorded vote against.
Councillor Steptoe.
No recorded vote and
I didn't hear how he voted.
Councillor Steptoe, could you repeat that, please?
no recorded vote and for.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
For both, please. Thank you.
Can you repeat that, please? Councillor Stanley?
For both, please.
For both. Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No. Sorry, no and against.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
No and against.
Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote and abstain, Chairman.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Yes, and for the motion, please.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for. No, sorry, no and against.
Councillor Wilson.
Yes, for a recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you, members.
That's all.
Councillor Wootton.
no and against.
Councillor Mrs Butcher, I missed you out. My apologies.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. No recorded vote and abstain from the motion.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, members.
That's right, because we haven't got Hazelwood Court.
No, Chris Stanley.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if there's something wrong with my sound. I can't hear anything. Ooh.
Sounds perfect. Can hear you perfectly, Councillor.
Members, I do apologise. We will have to take that vote again for technical reasons. I will go through the names once again, a little bit more slowly this time. So if you can indicate whether you would like a recorded vote for or against or wish to abstain.
Chairman, but before you're doing that, Councillor Cornell's got his hand up. He's had his hand up a while now. I'm not sure he wants a word on this one. Thank you.
Councillor Cornell, do you wish to speak?
It was actually regarding the apologies for absence. So I was waiting till after the vote. I didn't realise we'd need to revote. Apologies. Whilst I'm speaking, it was essentially I wasn't aware of. I've forgotten already Councillor Mrs Mason's list of absentees. It was just to ensure that I was noted on that as an apology for absence last meeting. Thank you, Chair.
That's in respect of the minutes, yes?
Yes.
Yeah,
apologies,
okay.
Yes. Right. So
That will be
let's
noted,
start
Councillor
again
Cannell.
slowly. Dotting around.
Right, here we go again, members. Councillor Mrs Belton.
No recorded vote against the motion.
Councillor Burton.
Chairman, Councillor Burton's having great difficulty. He keeps getting frozen. He can hear the meeting on his phone, but he's having problems speaking.
If we can see you, Councillor Burton, if you can thumbs up or thumbs down.
He's on the phone.
He's on the phone. Can he unmute and can we see?
Can you unmute yourself, Councillor Burton, please?
Councillor Burton voted no and again.
Oh,
Can you hear me now, Chairman?
Yes.
Yes.
yep.
Right, sorry, apologies, I can't, I'm having great difficulties here. Against a recorded vote and against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Butcher.
Slowly.
Yes, thank you. No recorded vote and abstain from the motion.
Councillor Mr Cannell.
Recorded vote not required, but for the motion.
Councillor Mr Carter.
No recorded vote and against.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you, Chair. A recorded vote, please, and for.
Myself against the recorded vote and against the motion. Councillor Efty.
Against and against.
Thank you. Councillor Eaves.
For recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mrs Goodin.
Against the recorded vote and against the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hookway.
For the recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
For the recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mr Hudson.
Against the recorded vote, against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ionu.
For the recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Lucas Gill.
No and against.
Councillor Mrs Lumley.
No and against.
Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. For a recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
Against a recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Merrick.
No and against.
Thank you. Councillor Milne.
No and against.
Councillor Newport.
For and for.
Councillor Mrs Pavlin.
No and against. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and against.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No and against. Thank you.
Councillor Mr Shaw.
Wait.
No and against.
Wait. Hang on then, 742. I need to get these numbers there. So 17. 17. 7, 9, 14, 17, 7, 9, 14, and that's that. That was that. How did he vote? Are you sure?
No and against.
That's 18, and that's okay. Fine.
Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote and against.
Councillor Sperring.
No recorded vote and against.
Councillor Stanley.
4 and 4, please.
Councillor Steptoe.
Recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Ward.
No and against, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
No and against, Chairman.
Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote, Chairman, and abstain. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Apologies for the delay, Chairman. For recorded vote and for the motion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Against both, please.
Councillor Wilson.
For the recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wootton.
No recorded vote, Chairman, and against.
Members, there will be a recorded vote. There were 13 members for the motion, 21 against and 1 abstention. So the motion has been lost. Thank you, members.
Chairman, on a point of order, I think there was 2 abstentions.
First time there was.
First time round, yes. Second time round, no.
No, Councillor Butcher and Councillor Weston, Chairman, were both abstaining.
Yeah,
Yes, both of us, both times.
yeah, I can concur with that.
Actually, another point of order, unless my arithmetic is incorrect, 13 plus 21, or was it 24? What was the figures? Can you repeat the figures, Mr. Chairman, because they seem to not add up to me.
We're working on it, Councillor Mrs Mason. We will come back. Come on.
Thank you.
Members, clarification, it's still a recorded vote. There were 13 votes for the motion, 21 against and 2 abstentions. Our apologies. So again, that motion has been lost. And I will, members, sign the minutes of the meeting on the 9th of July as soon as practical. I shall now take item 3 on the agenda, members, declarations of interest. Are there any?
George?
Chairman.
I usually look on them.
Councillor Ionu.
Chairman, I would like to raise a declaration of interest because I'm the chairman of the Rochford Chamber of Trade. That affects the CCTV working group from number 13.
Thank you, Councillor Ionu. Any others?
Chairman, I think as I was on the group at Rayleigh Town Council, which is temporarily suspended pending the outcome of the CCTV decisions at Rochford, perhaps I should declare an interest.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Newport.
Yes, Chairman, I would like to declare an interest in item 13 by way of being a member of Rayleigh Town Council and being on the community safety group, which was discussing the CCTV.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley.
Yes, Chairman. As a chairman of Rayleigh Town Council currently, but also as a member of the Community Safety Working Group, which was considering possibility of CCTV, but the report will go to council for further consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Lumley. Any others?
Yes, Councillor Ward.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. The same as the previous member of Rayleigh Town Council, and also on the working group that discussed CCTV for Rayleigh Town Council.
Any others? No? Members, I shall now take item 4 on the agenda, announcements from the chairman, leader or head of paid service. Members, there are none. Agenda item 5, public questions and member questions on notice. Members, there are none. Agenda item 6, business from last meeting. Members, does anyone have any questions relating to the business from the council minutes held on the 18th of February 2020 or the 19th of May 2020?
That's Mrs. Mason. Is she? Yeah, her hands up.
Yes, Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Silence implies assent.
Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Councillor
Mrs. Mason.
Councillor Mrs. Mason. Councillor Mrs. Mason, can you hear me?
I can now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are queries relating or matters arising from the minutes of the 18th of February, just for clarity. On page 22, it had been, I'm just trying to read it, the Council's monitoring officers would include this issue with her annual monitoring officer report to members. This would be done in April. Now, I have since that, we've had some communications with the managing director, who's advised us that council working has been carried out as normal, which I think is absolutely fantastic, bearing in mind the difficult situations everyone has had to deal with and the changes of practice. I requested a copy of this report from the officers on the 2nd of July. I've not had a response. So I wonder if this report has been produced, and if so, if it can be circulated, and if it hasn't been produced, when it will be produced. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mrs. Mason, the report unfortunately has not been issued as yet due to illness of the monitoring officer, and it will be issued just as soon as possible. Thank you.
There's no time span for that then, because we're, what, July now, 3 months later. Would it be within a month, perhaps? Would that be reasonable?
Councillor Mrs. Mason, you'll be updated outside of this meeting, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciated.
Councillor Connell.
Thank you, Chair. In a similar vein, the meeting, I believe we're talking about the meeting that took place 5 months ago in February. I was just wondering the best way to get an update on the EU motion that was passed on that date. Thank you, Chair.
The strategic director to update outside the meeting.
Chairman, you're muted still.
Councillor Connell, once again, we'll give you an update on that outside of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chairman, could you make sure those go to all members, please?
Yes.
They do.
Let me finish, if you may. I will assume that you're in agreement unless you click on the raised hand icon.
Okay, all agreed. All agreed. Moving on.
There's been no indication, members. I should take that as agreed. Thank you very much. And they will be allocated, they will be sent to all members. Members, I now take item 8 on the agenda to consider any reports from the executive and committees to council. Item 8.1, report of the review committee, Treasury Management Annual Review 2019 and 2020. Councillor Burton will introduce the report. Councillor Burton.
Hello, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Councillor Burton.
Okay, thank you. Apologies again. As members will have seen, this is the third report relating to the 2019-2020 municipal year, and this is an annual. Sorry, this car's passing. An annual review of the council's treasury management activities for that period. This report's fairly short and concise. It's presented to the review committee at our last meeting, where it was agreed it would be presented to full council with a recommendation to approve. Naomi Locust is available this evening to answer any additional questions that members may have. However, if there aren't any, I recommend moving this report for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Members, are there any questions?
Councillor Michael Hoy.
Councillor Mr. Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, there's no question. I just want to make a very short statement on this. This is regarding how I'll be voting tonight, which is to abstain. This is not because I think the work that's been done is poor. It's not because I think it's wrong. I think a good job has been done, and some of them are very good indeed. However, overall, I feel that it just does not go far enough for me, from my perspective and my standing. I think it should have had more teeth and should have had more targets, and certainly had political oversight either through the portfolio holder for the environment or the leader or deputy leader of the council. That is all. I'll be abstaining. I will not be voting against this. I think it's a step forward, but in my view, it's a smaller step than I think it could have been.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Anybody else wish to speak? No? Then members.
Councillor Williams.
Councillor
Williams.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarity, Councillor Hoy mentioned this should have been overviewed by the portfolio holder for the environment. We're talking about. I thought it was.
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Sorry, I've
right. Okay, thank you for the clarity. Thank you.
And my sound isn't great tonight. Sorry, apologies.
Point of
Councillor
order.
Williams, please continue.
Well, point of order, Chairman.
Councillor McPherson, point of order.
I think Councillor Michael Hoy is speaking on the wrong paper.
I've just said that, Councillor McPherson. My sound is awful at the moment, and I thought it was something else we were speaking about. So I'm having a terrible night.
No,
Okay.
I think we've got your view on the next paper.
Yes. Does that change your point of view then, Councillor Hoy?
My point of view has never changed on this report, and it is fine. Thank you very much.
Members, there is one recommendation at paragraph 2.1 of the report that the contents of the Treasury Management Annual Review be noted. And again, I assume that unless anybody clicks on the raised hand icon, that is noted, members.
It's noted. It's noted.
No?
Noted.
That, members, has been noted. Thank you very much. I shall now go on to item 8.2, report of the review committee, carbon neutral by 2030. And again, Councillor Burton will introduce this report. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you just confirm you can hear me again?
I can hear you, Councillor Burton.
Okay, thank you. Okay, 8.2. Firstly, I'd like to again thank members of the Carbon Neutral 2030 Working Group and the officers for their hard work that they've put into getting the report before members this evening. This again was presented to Review Committee at our last meeting, where officers answered questions and the original recommendations were agreed, with an amendment to one recommendation and the addition of the 10th recommendation. Marcus Houghton is present this evening. I'm sure he'll be able to answer any additional questions members may have on this wide-ranging and ongoing subject matter. If there aren't any, I recommend moving the report for approval. If there are any, members, can I just please ask that Marcus may need to get back to you a bit later if he's not got the answers for them this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Members, are there any questions? Councillor Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I would obviously, as chair of the Carbon Neutral Working Group, like to second Councillor Burton. Just a couple of comments. I'd like to echo the thanks to everybody who was on the Carbon Neutral Working Group, especially Councillor Danielle Belton and Councillor Craig Cannell, who attended a seminar on behalf of the group. Also to our portfolio holder for coming to all the meetings as an oversight, as he is the portfolio holder for the environment. And just listening to Councillor Michael Hoy's words, I would again like to extend an invitation for any member of the Green Party to come and join our working group. It will continue, and we now have several members from several of the minority groups. Unfortunately, nobody as yet from the Green, and I'm sure that they would be welcome to come and contribute and help make the carbon neutral working group the group that they feel that it should be, because I think the members have worked very, very hard on this, and the officers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. No questions on this. Just to thank Councillor McPherson for the kind words, and to extend my thanks to the rest of the working group for making it a welcome environment to work in on what is a very important matter. And as alluded to, this was meant to be a starting point, not all encompassing, and I look forward to continue working with the group to move this forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cannell. Councillor Mrs Mason. Councillor Mrs Mason.
She's on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was advising you that Councillor Hoy his signal had dropped out, but he's back in now, so that's all it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. With regards to, there's been a lot of hard work gone into this report, and with regards to the asset review and the asset project that is coming forward, can I have some clarification that the thoughts and ideas and suggestions that the Carbon Working Group are bringing forward will be taken into account with the asset development programme?
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Mr Houghton, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, I can confirm that there's been active conversations throughout the working group, if you like, some discussions alongside the asset programme. So I'll be discussing with Matt Harwood, my Assistant Director, sort of aspirations, and they have been taken on board, and we'll continue to have discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to thank all of the members that were on this working party, especially AD Marcus Houghton and Paul Gowers, who did an amazing job. And thank you. And I do hope that this working party continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Mr Hoy, did you wish to speak on this item?
Thank you. Sorry, Chairman, about my dropping out there. There's no point repeating myself again. I've said it on the wrong item, but I'm sure everyone remembers it. So that's no problem at all.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Members, there are 10 recommendations arising from the report as set out on paragraph 2.1 on pages 8.2.2 and 8.2.3. Can I ask members as to whether they are minded to vote on all recommendations en bloc? Please click on the hand icon if you don't agree with this.
We have to take each recommendation individually.
Councillor Hoy, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, there was only one item I wouldn't take on block, and I'm happy to vote for it, which I cannot get up on my other screen at the moment, unfortunately, which was around the plastic one. I'm happy to take that. I'm happy to vote for that, but I'd abstain on the others.
So we can't take it on block.
Okay.
It should be in the script there.
Yeah.
We could actually.
Members, in due of Councillor Hoy's comments, are you minded, members, to take them all on block except for recommendation 2? Again, please raise your hand icon if you don't agree with this.
Christine Mason. Okay.
Councillor Mrs Mason.
Hold on.
Mr. Chairman, it's not a question of not agreeing. It's a question I can't get. My computer's frozen. I can't get the recommendations up. So if you could read the recommendations, then I will probably be able to agree. But at the moment, I can't vote on something I can't hear or see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Mason. I shall read the recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the draft carbon neutral policy and action plan be approved. Recommendation 2, that the draft disposable plastic policy and action plan be approved. 3, that the annual report of greenhouse gas (GHG) emissions be prepared to show that the council's carbon footprint is, what the council's carbon footprint is. I'll repeat that one again. Recommendation 3, that the annual report of greenhouse gas (GHG) emissions be prepared to show what the council's carbon footprint is. 4, that all council reports include a section on the effect of the decision will have on GHG emissions of the council. 5, that a revised procurement strategy be prepared taking into account the issues mentioned in the report. 6, that the limitations around the current planning regulations be noted. 7, that the revised local plan takes into account the government's environmental bill. 8, that the opportunities of working in partnership with Southend Borough Council and other Essex authorities to reduce Rochford District Council's carbon footprint be explored. 9, that the potential cost of a carbon reduction officer or other possible arrangements such as partnership working to deliver the initiatives in the proposed action plan be investigated. Once quantified, any request for additional resource to be considered as part of the budget setting process for 2021/22. And 10, that the review committee receives an annual update on carbon neutral by 2030. Mrs Mason, did you hear all those? Councillor Mrs Mason, did you hear all those?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I have got no problem with voting on those.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I was hoping to come in before, just as an aide memoir. These were the items exactly the same order as on the review committee meeting last week, of which Councillor Mrs Mason was a member. It's quite an emotive subject for me, so I can always remember how people voted, if that would help at all.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
Thank Councillor Mrs Macpherson for her assistance, but if I can't get documents on my machine, there's nothing I can do. Thank you.
Members, we'll take a roll call for all recommendations apart from recommendation 2. And again, when I call your name, if you could indicate whether you'd like to have a recorded vote, whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Mrs Belton.
No recorded vote for the motions.
Councillor Burton.
No recorded vote for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Butcher.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Connell.
No recorded vote required for the recommendations.
Councillor Mr Carter.
No recorded vote and for the motions.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you, Chair. No recorded vote and for. Thank you.
Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote and for the recommendations. Councillor Efty.
For and for.
Councillor Eaves.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chairman. No recorded vote and for all the motions. Thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
No recorded vote and abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
No recorded vote, Chairman, and abstain. And could I have my vote recorded, please, as such?
You can. Councillor Hudson.
No recorded vote for the motions.
Councillor Ionu.
No recorded votes and for the motions.
Councillor Mr Lucas Gill.
No recorded vote and for all the motions.
Councillor Mrs Lumley.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. No recorded vote, abstain. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Merrick.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Milne.
No recorded vote and for all the motions.
Thank you. Councillor Newport.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Paveling.
No and for. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No and for. Thank you.
Councillor Mr Shaw.
No and for.
Where's the second? That's 4, that's 22. And that's it. Okay, that's motions, yeah.
Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote for.
Thank you. Councillor Sperring.
No and for.
Councillor Stanley.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Steptoe.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No and for, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Councillor Mrs Watson.
No recorded vote and for, Chairman.
Mr Wilkinson. Councillor Wilkinson.
No recorded vote and for all of the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
No recorded vote and for the recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilson.
No and for.
Councillor Wootton.
No and for. Thank you, Chairman.
Members, that has been carried. There are 33 votes for, 3 abstentions, no recorded vote. Thank you, members. Members, I shall now take recommendation 2, and again I would need to go through the roll call. If you, just to remind you, recommendation 2 is that the draft disposable plastic policy and action plan be approved. Please indicate when I call your name whether you want a recorded vote for, against or abstain. Councillor Mrs Belton.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Burton. Can we see him?
Hold on.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Burton. Councillor Mrs Butcher.
Can we go back to
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Okay. Councillor Burton, are you there now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
No for recorded vote and 4 recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Connell.
No and 4, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Carter.
No and 4. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you. No and abstain. Thank you.
Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote and for the recommendation. Councillor Efty.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Eaves.
No and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Councillor Hookway.
No recorded vote and abstain.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
No and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hudson.
No and 4.
Councillor Ionu.
No and 4.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs Lumley.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs Mason.
No and 4 the motion. Thank you. Recommendation, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
No and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Merrick.
No and 4.
Councillor Milne.
No and 4.
Councillor Newport.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs Pavlin.
No and 4. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mr Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. No recorded vote for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote for.
Councillor Sperring.
No recorded vote for.
Councillor Stanley.
No and 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steptoe.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote, Chairman, and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Wilkinson.
No and 4.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
No and 4.
Councillor Wootton.
No recorded vote and 4.
Members, that has been carried. No recorded vote. 34 votes for and 2 abstentions. Thank you. Members, I shall now take item 9 on the agenda, report on urgent decisions. You've seen the urgent decisions. Is that noted, members? And again, I will assume agreement unless anyone clicks on the raised hand icon. No, that's noted, members. Thank you. Shall now take item 10 on the agenda, report of the leader of the work of the executive. Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the second ordinary council meeting of the 2020/21 municipal year. My first as leader of the council. I would like to welcome all members. Since the last meeting on the 19th of May, the executive has met twice. At its meeting on the 17th of June, considerations included clarification and confirmation of the amount received from central government to assist with the coronavirus situation and how it has been allocated. Approval of the provisional outturn position against the 2019/20 revenue budget and transfer from business rate smoothing reserves. Approval of the transfer from the pensions reserve and revenue carried forward requests. Approval of earmarked reserves, including those rolled forward as grant funded and ring-fenced projects. Approval of capital project carry forwards for outstanding schemes at the end of the 2019/20 into the 2020/21 for completion. Agreed a spending plan for the council's reopening High Street safely grant funding agreement. Other matters that my executive colleagues and I have dealt with include agreement of a formal response to be submitted in respect of the Bradwell B consultation on proposals for a new nuclear power station, and also approval of the Environmental Health Service Plan for 2020-21 to comply with the Food Law Code of Practice. Members, I will be happy to take any questions in respect of the work of the executive, and I'm sure my executive colleagues will be happy to contribute where appropriate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Are there any questions, members? Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? Because I can't.
I can hear you. We can hear you. Excellent.
I'd like to congratulate Councillor Wootton on delivering his first report on his work as a leader. He's stated that one of the considerations that the executive took was the clarification and confirmation of the amount received from central government to assist with the coronavirus situation and how it was allocated. Now, I know that has been circulated a couple of times. I'm also very aware that the circulation of the information that was given to us was in a draft format, and we were advised by the Section 151 officer that it would be changing. So I wondered if that after this meeting, I don't expect the leader to have the information to hand, but if he could circulate that clarification and confirmation of the latest allocations with the rationale behind it to all members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Mason. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. With reference to the sum of money that Essex County Council have received with regards to cycle tracks, the portfolio holder for planning / transport was looking in to potentially putting together an application to Essex County Council for grant funding to look at our cycle tracks and make improvements. In particular, what's known as the old roadway that runs back of the new Hall Road development. The name of it escapes me instantly. I do apologise, Chairman. And in particular, looking at how that can be linked in from Rochford through to the what's known as the Christmas Tree Estate, and also into Cherry Orchard Park. Can I ask, Chairman, how that project is continuing, and when we are likely to see the potential of a application going forward to Essex County Council for some of that funding? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Wooden, would you like Councillor Ward to respond to that question?
Well, if I can come back first to Councillor Mrs Mason's request, and of course we'll be happy to circulate the latest figures for her in that respect. Chairman, whilst I'm very happy for Councillor Ward, I think the questions are specific to items on my report, and whilst it is a very reasonable and appropriate inquiry, it doesn't actually relate specifically to the report this evening, but and I think it's Ironwell Lane that Councillor Steptoe is referring to, but perhaps he could just clarification what point that comes under within the report.
Chairman, it was with reference to the work of the executive. The leader mentioned at the end of his report that we'd happy to take questions on the work of the executive. And yes, just to clarify, it is Ironwell Lane.
Okay, Chairman, I think Councillor Ward can certainly provide an update. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, on regards to that, at this moment, Marcus Houghton, the AD, is investigating the whole of this. We have discussed how we're going to look at the strategic view of cycling throughout the district. And we're looking at lots of options, which I believe I have spoken with Councillor Steptoe to over the last year, and I think he's aware of those options. I'm happy to pass on to Marcus Houghton if he has an update. If not, I'm sure we'll be able to provide that update in due course to all members. Thank you.
Mr. Houghton, have you got an update?
I think it's pretty easy to circulate an update after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. My question for the leader is that sorry, I can't find item 10 report, but could the leader tell us if any of the £50,000 in the leaders fund has had to be used in response to the coronavirus?
Councillor Wotton.
I'd have to defer. I don't believe it has, but I'd have to defer to Councillor Smith, if I may, on that. Councillor Simon Smith.
Councillor Smith, can you respond to that, please?
If Councillor Newport could just repeat his inquiry again, please.
Councillor Newport, can you repeat your question?
I can, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, could you tell members if any of the £50,000 within the Leaders Fund has been used in response to coronavirus, and if so, what has it been used for?
I don't believe any has been spent, but at this moment in time.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Thank you, Councillor Newport, for your question. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following on from Councillor Newport's question, I don't know. I guess that Councillor Smith is probably not able to answer this at this particular moment. I actually put an application in, probably March, I think it was, for funding from that fund. I was told by the Section 151 officer that obviously we have to wait until the beginning of the new financial year, which was back in April. Now, naturally, well, I've taken a step back because of what's been going on with the coronavirus. But in light of the last answer, I wonder if somebody might be able to give me an answer either now or as soon as to the current state of play with applications for that fund if the money's not gone elsewhere. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Smith, can you respond to that?
It is the leaders fund rather than mine, but I would point out that while we've been doing our best to have business as normal, mines and energy and attention has been focused quite rightly on other matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Members, I can't see anybody indicating they wish to speak. I shall therefore go on to agenda item 11, motions on notice. Members, we have two motions on notice that were deferred from the council meeting of the 18th of February. One from councillors Cannell and Newport relating to the firework campaigning has been withdrawn from tonight's agenda. I would, however, propose that we take the other proposal by councillors Newport, Stanley and Cannell relating to tree planting strategy first. Is that agreed, members? I will assume agreement unless anyone clicks on the raised hand icon. Nobody? That, members, has been agreed. Councillor Newport, would you like to summarise and speak to your motion on notice, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, Chairman, I would like to, if I may, I will withdraw this motion as I have received an email from the portfolio holder for the environment who has offered to work with us on this motion, and we will work outside of this meeting with the Assistant Director if the portfolio holder for the environment is in agreement with that.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, more than happy to do so. Thank you very much, Councillor Newport, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just confirm this is about the tree planting motion?
It is.
Thank you. Could I just add one thing? I fully endorse the motion, but I think the other thing that we should look at is protecting our existing woodland, particularly when we are developing our new local plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Members.
That motion has been withdrawn by Councillor.
Sorry?
That motion has been withdrawn by Councillor.
Councillor Wilson, just to confirm that motion has now been withdrawn by Councillor Newport. Okay. Members, we'll now take the item, the first motion, and this is in respect of, bear with me. A motion on notice relating to the system of voting has been proposed by Councillors Wilkinson, Eaves and Ionu. Councillor Wilkinson, would you please like to summarise and speak on your motion of notice, please?
Thank you, Chairman. This motion, Chairman, is submitted to full council this evening to recognise and deal with the desire from some members to have the numerical results of voting by a show of hands recorded within the minutes of the meeting. At present, the Constitution does not prevent this, but it doesn't expressly permit it either. It is important to recognise that in a democratic society, there will always be some who are in favour of a proposal and others who are against it. Chairman, the current system for recording votes, with the obvious exception of a recorded vote under Rule 17.4, does not allow the minutes of the meeting to reflect the difference of opinion. It either shows the motion passed or failed. Any member of the council or member of the public reading those minutes will therefore never know if there was any division in opinion, and a natural assumption will be that all members voted either one way or the other. And we, of course, know that this is rarely the case. Central governments have a system in which they acknowledge the division in opinion, and the votes are recorded to reflect this. Whilst the minutes must obviously reflect the final result of a ballot, and that motion will be where it's either passed or it's failed by full council, it is vitally important in my submission, Mr. Chairman, that the precise voting to be represented in the minutes, which are the final record of a council meeting for future reference. Chairman, therefore, my proposal this evening is that paragraph 17.3 of the Constitution be replaced with the following. Unless a recorded vote is demanded under Rule 17.4, the chairman will take the vote by a show of hands, and the numbers of those voting for or against a motion or abstaining from voting will be recorded in the minutes. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Wilkinson, do you have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Members, are there any questions? Is it? Councillor Ward.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I was just wondering, is this also, are you happy for this to be included in remote meetings as well? Because we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation where we are conducting remote meetings. And, you know, I think it's not unreasonable, this motion, in my opinion, and I'm happy to support it. And obviously, I'd like to see us make how can we vote far easier going forward in remote meetings. I just wonder if Councillor Wilkinson's, Eaves and Ionu would be happy with that, please.
Councillor Wilkinson, can you respond to that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. We don't know how long we're going to be in this situation for. To answer your question directly, my initial desire is for this to take effect immediately. I am aware that I don't know what goes on behind the scenes that's currently going on next to the chairman, and I'm not going to start enforcing or trying for us to enforce on the Democratic Services Officers something which is physically impossible. So subject to their ability to be able to do what we're asking of them, then I would request this with immediate effect. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Mrs. Weston.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand what Councillor Wilkinson is saying, but I'm led to believe we had a meeting with you and Robin, Councillor Robin Dray, with Sonia and Andrew the other day, talking about how we can set up a system of doing voting, which we felt we were doing quite well. I know it's not come to the council at the moment, but I'm just wondering whether we ought to just hang on maybe for a while, just so we find out whether Sonia and Angela can sort this one out. It's quite a good system, the way they were sorting it out. It's just a thought, Chairman.
Councillor Weston, we feel that that's unrelated to this motion at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor, Mr. Hoy.
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. I think you've just dealt with it, actually. I was just going to say that I think the way the voting works in the virtual meeting seems to lend itself quite easily just to record the number of votes for and against and abstentions and the do not vote. So I think it possibly makes it an easier way to start anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the previous speaker, Councillor Hoy, and I'd also like to support the motion. It's a simple motion. It brings us into line with more senior bodies of democracy, and it should cause no problems. I appreciate the difficulty that our officers and our chairman is having with the remote voting, but I think this is a totally separate subject and should be treated as such. And certainly I will support the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Connell.
Chair, my concerns are wrapped up with your previous comments. I've since removed my hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support. I think there was an amendment somewhere within all this to ask that this be taken from now with the remote counting of votes, and I'd be happy to support that if Councillor Wilkinson would like to repeat the amendment, which I think Councillor Ward suggested.
Councillor FD, I don't think there was an amendment suggested by Councillor Ward. It was just a statement of fact.
All right, okay. We've lost you, Councillor Dray. Sorry.
Councillor
That's
FD,
it, yeah.
I don't think there was amendment suggested by Councillor Ward. It was simply a statement of fact. Is that correct, Councillor Ward?
It was basically looking at this. Is this intended to start immediately with immediate effect, or wait until we actually have meetings in the chamber? We don't know how long this is going to continue with remote meetings. So where we are going to eventually, one hopes, have a show of hands where we do have the hand raising ability, where it will make voting a lot easier and maybe help our officers going forward. It was purely to note the factor that if this were to happen, raising one's hand in either for or against, it would actually work quite well. That was basically it.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I think Councillor Wilkinson did answer that question. Did you not, Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was just going to come back on that point because I did answer that question and by saying that my desire is for this to be immediate. I mean, and let's face it, even in a virtual setting, the voting that we're having tonight, which we haven't had a recorded vote yet from memory, correct me if I have that wrong. So they all fall under paragraph 17.3. So they're all what we would class as a vote by show of hands. So it would include this type of vote. So subject to the Democratic Service Officers physically being able to do this, because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, then my desire is for this to take effect immediately. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that I totally support this motion as it stands. Thank you.
Councillor Connell again, do you wish to come back?
Yes, Chair. It was just to clarify, I believe there has been a recorded vote this evening in regard to Councillor Wilkinson's comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that this seems a sensible alteration to the Constitution and should actually make life easier for yourself and for recording the votes in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Members, I cannot note anybody else wishing to speak on this motion. There will now be, I shall put the motion to the vote, members. There will now be a roll call of names. And again, you know the procedure. When I call your name, please indicate whether you want a recorded vote or if you're voting for or against the motion, or if you wish to abstain. Councillor Mrs Belton.
No recorded vote for the motion.
Councillor Burton.
No recorded vote for the motion.
Councillor Mrs Butcher.
Thank you, Chairman. No recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Connell.
Thank you, Chair. No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Carter.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you. Recorded vote, please, for this motion, and well done, guys.
Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote and for the motion. Councillor FD.
For and for, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Eaves.
For recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Gooding.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. For a recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hoy.
For a recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hudson.
No recorded vote in favour of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ionu.
For a recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Lucas Gill.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Lumley.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a recorded vote and support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you.
You, Councillor Merrick.
No and 4.
Councillor Milne.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Newport.
4 and 4, please.
Councillor Mrs Pavling.
No and 4. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No and 4.
Sorry. Councillor Mr Shaw.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote. 4.
Councillor Sperring.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Stanley.
4 and 4, please.
4 recorded vote. Yes, thank you. Councillor Steptoe.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No and 4, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for the motion.
Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote and for the motion, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
No and 4, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, yes and 4.
Councillor Wotton.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Thank you. Members, no recorded vote.
Yes, there was a recorded.
Oh, my apologies, members. There is a recorded vote and the vote was unanimous for the motion. Members, I shall now take the next motion on notice. This is relating to the front desk at Rayleigh Police Station, having been proposed by Councillor Steptoe and Mrs Rowe. Councillor Steptoe, would you like to summarise and speak on your motion of notice, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you very much indeed. I'll introduce the motion, but I will reserve the right to speak at the end of the debate if so necessary. I'm sure most people will realise that if you need to go and speak to the police at a front desk, the only options you have currently at the moment is either to go to Southend or to Basildon, which is not really very useful for certainly people that live in outlying areas. There is a strong campaign coming forward to reopen the desk at Rayleigh Police Station. It does not necessarily need to be with frontline police, but can be dealt with by civilian workers, whether they be volunteers or not. So therefore, the motion that I'm proposing, that this council fully supports the campaign and calls on the Police and Fire Crime Commissioner and the Chief Constable to reopen the public front desk at Rayleigh Police Station and for its beat officers to hold regular bi-weekly meetings for the public to attend at key venues around the district. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I will second that motion. But I'd just like to add, with such a big police station in Rayleigh, the expectation of the public is that the front desk is open. Members of the public just need reassurance, in my opinion. This could be for a trial period, monitoring the reasons for visits to this station. And doesn't necessarily have to be all day. It could be 5 mornings a week, or depending on their staff situation. So yes, I totally second this motion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Mrs. Rowe. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to start by saying I fully support this motion, and I will be voting in favour of it. I've just got a couple of questions which perhaps Councillor Steptoe or Councillor Rowe could answer. Having been a serving officer in Essex at the time that Rayleigh Police Station front desk was shut, as were a lot of the others, I'm sort of I've seen what's gone on in the background and the reasons why, and so therefore I'm a little bit more aware of the uphill struggle it's going to be to try and achieve this. So two questions really. It's interesting that Councillor Steptoe mentioned volunteers, because I know that there has been some interest from parties in the past who've approached Essex Police to do exactly that, and they were somewhat hesitant. So I do hope that's something that could go forward. But I just wonder what contact has been made with the local police, so particularly someone like Chief Inspector Dave Miles, who's the local policing commander, with regards to these bi-weekly meetings. They already hold some meetings, but they're certainly not frequent enough. And if they've got the resources to do that, and I just wonder what sort of background inquiries have been done. Like I said, I fully support this. I'm not trying to put any spanner in the works, and I want to really help make this work, and I'd be interested to work with the guys doing this. But I suppose I'm just putting a slightly realistic covering over it, having only recently retired from the force myself, so I know what the strains are. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Steptoe, would you like to respond to that?
Chairman, if I may, there are a number of other questions. If I can hear all the questions, then I'll come back and answer all the questions at the same time.
We'll come back to you, Councillor Steptoe. Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think it's very, very important that this office is open. The police do need to be front-facing. We need to be able to actually see them and see them about, and we need to be able to contact them. And I think, you know, the police also need to have good public relations. That's very, very important. And I think this is all part of it. They need to understand that, I guess as Councillor Wilkinson has just said, as a newly retired police officer, I think he understands the constraints that are there. But I also believe that sometimes they can be a dreadful excuse for not actually doing what is needing. And I know that PR is not something probably the police are necessarily famous for, but I think it would really, really help to give confidence to residents. And I think opening up this front office, albeit it may be volunteers, PCSOs, or other officers who are available, will really give a tremendous encouragement to the public in regards to the police. Thank you. And I'm going to fully support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think we've all heard from the Police Fire Crime Commissioner saying he prefer officers on the street as opposed to in a building. But I fully support this motion that's being put forward by Councillor Steptoe and Councillor Rowe. I think residents are fed up with playing hunt the policeman, and I think that there should be somewhere they can go and have face-to-face contact with a representative from the police. And I think it would be very reassuring for residents to know where they can go and, if help's required, seek it. So I will be fully supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to thank the councillors, Councillor Steptoe and Councillor Mrs. Rowe for bringing this forward. I also fully support this. One thing Councillor Black taught me way back when is if you would like support from someone, try not to offend them. And with that in mind, I would, however, propose we give the Chief Constable his proper title when passing this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cannell. Councillor Mr. Hoy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I studied this motion with interest. I will support it, but I just have concerns about volunteers yet again being used to fulfil frontline duties which should be paid for. I again fail to understand why the Conservative PFCC doesn't actually speak to the Conservative members here. And again, perhaps the Conservative members should reflect on the fact that 20,000 police officers have been cut, and that may have some bearing on why the office at Rayleigh is closed. But I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, really. I fully support the motion. I think it will be great for the district to have a front desk open again. But I would just like to say, personally, during COVID or throughout COVID, I've really noticed an increased amount of police officers on the street, and it's been welcomed by members of the public. They've done a number of live Q&A online Facebook sessions over the last few months and before, all area based, which have seemed to be really well received and really easy to use. And finally, throughout the last few months, I've really felt the police have been reactive to areas of complaints and concerns around the district and have done a good job in putting a stop to some antisocial behaviour that's been happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Belton. Councillor Milne.
Yes, I fully support this this idea, but we also have an opportunity because the Roger Hurst actually has had some progressive and innovative ideas in Essex, and I went up to see the specials being sworn in, and they were quality people that he'd selected. And the idea of volunteers who don't want to be a special but want to be part of the community, could we explore new ways of managing this, not just expecting someone to be propped up behind a desk and the guy goes shuffling in through the door, but rather if we look at what's going on in Glasgow, for example, they're using people in the community sometimes. I know we're not a high crime area, so we haven't really got the problems of Glasgow, but there's an opportunity because there are youth schemes, there's all kinds of things going on. There's an opportunity to look at this with the volunteers, and it is a facility. You've got that large building, and as Councillor Steptoe says, you've got to go an awful long way to see someone face to face. So I think it's got value, and it needs exploring. And if it does come back, then it needs monitoring to see that it's, you know, it's actually doing what we think it would do. And that's all I have to say on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly welcome this motion proposed by Councillor Steptoe. Really welcome it because it is all about providing reassurance. It is totally unacceptable to me that there is a building in the centre of a large town and it is known as a police station, and yet members of the public cannot get in there. I believe that is totally unacceptable. This is about the reassurance. It's about providing a signposting service to members of the public. The old reasons why people used to pop into a police station have long disappeared. But let us not forget, there's a two-way process here. It is about providing intelligence. Often people walking by a police station will drop in and provide a bit of information about local issues and local crime. And that is of huge value to the police locally, and we shouldn't overlook that factor. In terms of volunteers, there is a system within the policing service of police support volunteers, PSVs, and it is an established system. And my view is, if people actually want to serve their community in that way, that is not exploiting volunteer labour. It is actually allowing them to be part of the community they want to serve. And I see no difference with people doing that sort of work compared with working in the community hub. You just attract volunteers to do what they would most like to do, provided they are suitable. And in terms of numbers, yes, we know why there was a need to reduce numbers, but I applaud the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner for the fact that his creative approach has actually brought Essex Police numbers back to probably near record levels, certainly around the 3,500 mark. And I believe the figures were about 3,600 at their maximum, accepting that they did drop to 2,800. But I think that we should be very proud of what has actually happened. So I certainly support the motion, and I welcome Councillor Steptoe's proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton. Councillor Steptoe, would you like to come back on the question raised by Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I had some discussions with the local Chief Inspector, David Miles, some time ago now. It probably goes back to the beginning of the year, with regards to increasing the number of public-facing meetings that police could attend. But don't forget, this is part of a much larger campaign that is being brought forward with regards to the station itself. With regards to the volunteers, yes, volunteers like to do all sorts of different things, and I think we've been shown over the last few months how much people do want to volunteer to help their community. Just one particular note was that we say there is no public access to the Rayleigh Police Station. That is correct, through the front door, but there are occasions where the public are taken in through the back door, not necessarily willingly, I do. But I do think it's important that we go back to the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner and ask him to really consider this as an option, to look at what he can actually do working with the Chief Constable and actually see what we can do. So I move the motion that is printed on page 11.3, item 1.5.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Wilkinson.
Chairman, thank you for letting me come back. I just wanted to make it clear that, because I'm conscious that maybe my comments came across negatively and I didn't want them to, because I fully support this. I'm just trying to be a realist, I suppose. Could I just ask, in just in light of what Councillor Steptoe has just said, that when the approach to the PFCC is made, that we have to be clear that we want him to try and do his best to try and increase the numbers down here, because what we obviously don't want, and I'm sure all members agree, is to have lots of nice meetings and people in front officers, but to the detriment of officers on the streets, because officers need to be on the streets. So obviously he needs to increase the establishment down here if he can, and I would urge that's the approach that we take with him. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. Very small point. The text reads Chef Constable. If we could change it to Chief Constable, I'd be more than happy to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Steptoe, do you agree with that small change?
Chairman, yes, I took it just as a typo, shall we say, within the paperwork. I'm sure.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe.
The Chief Constable, I'm sure he is a very good chef, but I've yet to have it started.
Councillor Mrs. Rowe. You're muted, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. It's clearly a typo, so yes, if that can be changed, that would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I don't see anybody else indicating they wish to speak. So, members, I shall put the motion to the vote, subject to that minute change that was been mentioned by Councillor Cannell. And as you know, members, we shall have a roll call of names. When I call your names, please indicate whether you wish to have a recorded vote for, against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
No recorded vote for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Cannell.
No and for, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Mr. Carter.
No recorded and for the motion.
Councillor Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. Recorded, please, and for.
Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote and for. Councillor Efty.
No and for.
Councillor Eaves.
No recorded vote and for. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mrs. Gooding.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mr. Hoy.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Hudson.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ionu.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mr Lucas Gill.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Lumley.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. No recorded vote and I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Merrick. Councillor Merrick. I'll come back to you, Mr. Councillor Merrick.
Yeah, wait a second. Where is he? He's gone.
Councillor Newport.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Mild.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Mrs Pavlin.
No and for. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. No and for.
Councillor Mr Shaw.
No and for.
Councillor Mr Smith.
No recorded vote for.
Thank you. Councillor Sperring.
No for.
Councillor Stanley.
No and for.
Councillor Steptoe.
No and for.
Councillor Ward.
No and for, Chairman.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote and for, Chairman.
Councillor Wilkinson.
No and for, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Councillor Wilson.
No and for, Chairman.
Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
I shall try Councillor Merrick once again. Is Councillor Merrick still with us?
He's waiting. Where is it? Hold on. Yeah, we'll have to proceed without him, I think. Let's just see if he gets there.
He's just joining us, members.
You can't. You will see. We don't know how much of the debate he's heard. We don't know how much of the
Members, I'm not sure if Councillor Merrick missed any of the debate. The motion has been passed, no recorded vote and 34 voted for. Thank you very much, members. Members, we'll now go on to the next motion on notice. This is relating to the Environment Bill and has been posed by Councillor Mrs Macpherson and Councillor Mrs Gooding. Councillor Mrs Macpherson, would you please summarise and speak on your motion of notice?
Thank you, Chairman. The Environment Bill's already been mentioned this evening. In actual fact, motion 7 of the carbon neutral report actually mirrors one of the recommendations for this motion. I was a little bit bemused earlier. The Environment Bill can make such an impact on our local community and the future local plan, and yet not all members voted for that motion. So I'm just going to run through my motion here and hopefully gain some support from members. I originally submitted it, by the way, on the 11th of March, hence there was a crossover with the carbon neutral report. So last year our government led the way in being the first national government to declare an environment and climate emergency, aiming to be carbon neutral by 2050. Our own authority has set up a carbon neutral working group specifically to identify how we can reduce our carbon footprint and aim to become carbon neutral. We now have the emerging Environment Bill, which will bring into UK law environmental protections and recovery. The Environment Bill will put the environment at the centre of policy making. It will make sure that we have a cleaner, greener and more resilient country for the next generation. This will provide new developments that enhance biodiversity and create new green spaces for local communities to enjoy. So this council is currently working on preparing a new local plan. I propose that the Environment Bill is at the centre of this new plan, and also that the council lobbies the Secretary of State to ensure that the National Planning Policy Framework and the Planning Advisory Service adopts the aims of the Environment Bill within their policy framework. Thank you, Chairman, and may I reserve the right to speak at the end of debate.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs McPherson. Councillor Mrs McPherson, do you have a seconder? Who is?
It's Julie Gooding, Councillor Gooding.
Thank you. Councillor Gooding can confirm that, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As part of the carbon neutral working group, I can see how important it is for a whole cross-party support for this motion, as without adoption by the Secretary of State into the NPPF, that's the National Planning Policy Framework, and the Planning Advisory Service, we will have problems in enforcing any change. So I second this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. Councillor Foy.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be supporting this motion. I will make a couple of comments though, because Councillor Mrs McPherson has made a couple of points which I think are directed towards me. I will point out that the 7 item or recommendation 7 on item 8.2 just said takes into account the government's environment bill, and that's the point I was trying to make. It's not very forceful. Take into account can mean anything, whereas this motion is much better. It says we actually do something, which is why I will support it. Obviously, I've got a few problems with the environment bill. They may change or they may not, but even at the moment as it stands, I'm very happy to support it being at the centre of our planning policy, and I welcome this council liaising or inputting into any changes to that environment bill, and I'm very happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mr. Hoy. Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome this motion. I think it's probably well overdue, but unfortunately, so is the Environment Bill. And as much as I support this, and I do support it wholeheartedly, I think we need a minor change. And if Councillor McPherson will bear with me, I will explain why. The Environment Bill itself was delayed in 2019. The sittings have been suspended because of the pandemic, so it's delayed yet again. The committee report itself isn't actually due until late autumn. Now, bearing in mind the difficulties that Parliament can find itself in and the difficulties that the country may find itself in, there is a possibility, or even a probability, I don't know, I'm not a psychic, that this bill will not be passed. Therefore, there's 2 items to Councillor McPherson's and Councillor Gooding's motion. One is that this council lobbies the Secretary of State to ensure that the National Planning Policy Framework and Planning Advisory Service adopts the aims of the environmental bill within their policy framework. And I wholeheartedly support that. I couldn't support it more. The slight problem I have, and perhaps if I explain because of the potential difficulties and delays, that this council is currently working on preparing a new local plan. I know the emerging local plan is quite topical at the moment. I propose that the Environment Bill is at the centre of this new plan. The problem I have with that is that we are trying to get our local plan through as quickly as possible The Environment Bill may be later. Can I suggest and ask if Councillor Mrs McPherson will consider just putting the 2 words into that first sentence, that the aims, so that it isn't held up, so that the local plan can then endorse it with the aims of the environmental bill rather than the bill. Because if the bill's not passed, we're in a difficult situation. I know it's semantics, I know it's difficult, but I'm trying to be constructive, and I hope that the comments that I've made will be taken in that way. But certainly I support the motion. Thank you.
So would you like to comment on that? Councillor Mrs McPherson, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I was just unmuting. Shall I be totally candid? I just wonder why Councillor Mrs Mason has left it until this evening to raise this. This could have been brought to us earlier. Behind the scenes, as you know, other groups, including other minority groups, have been working collaboratively. So if a motion is put forward and they have something to add to it or add value to it, they've actually gone to that person and had a conversation instead of leaving it until we've got a very big agenda to bring it up at full council. And I'm not quite sure why Councillor Mrs Mason does this. I am quite happy to add those 2 words in. I'm merely pointing out how much easier it would have been if that was put to me yesterday, a day ago, or even this morning. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs McPherson. Councillor Ward.
Can I come back on that, please, Mr Chairman?
Are you allowing Mrs Mason, Councillor Mrs Mason, to speak first?
Are you happy for that, Councillor Ward?
Yes, I am.
Councillor Mrs Mason, you may speak. Councillor Mrs Mason.
There's a very simple explanation to the implied criticism that's being levelled at me, is that as the officers are aware that I customarily have paper copies. Unfortunately, due to the new working arrangements that the council has had to impose on us, I don't. And my computer system and my technology isn't always up to the information I have. So I don't get the information necessarily in a timely fashion, and I don't get it in a fashion that I can always access. The reason that I haven't been able to access this is because it came out in a fashion that I couldn't open it until today. So that's the reason, Councillor McPherson. It was nothing to do with a lack of willingness to support you, but it was a lack of the technology that is supporting the council at the moment. And I hope that explains the problem that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Mason.
Mayor, Chairman, just respond.
Sorry, Councillor Mrs Mason, do you have a seconder for your slight amendment?
I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
You are, okay. Thank you,
But-
Councillor Mrs McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. And just as a point of order, could I just re-mention that this motion was put forward back in March. So it has been in all of our councillors' hands for quite some considerable time until it's now come forward post-COVID. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs McPherson, for the sake of clarity, can you please confirm exactly where you'd like the amendments to be made? Sorry, Councillor Mrs Mason, my apologies. Councillor Mrs Mason?
Shall I help chair if Councillor Mrs Mason's having problems?
Can you not hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Can you please clarify, Councillor Mrs Mason, exactly where you'd like the amendments to be made?
It was just the 2 words to ensure that this is adopted. Let me go through. I'm sorry, I've got it on screen. It takes me a long time to get these things in the right place. You'll have to bear with me. My internet isn't as speedy as one would like. On the first proposal, it's not numbered, but it's got a hyphen in front of it. This council is currently working on preparing a new local plan. I propose that the aims of, simple as that, the same as the second one. So it would be the aims of the Environment Bill is at the centre, as opposed to the Environment Bill, purely in case the bill isn't passed in the sequentially.
May I just say that it's actually 3 words, Chairman. So it will read on the first part of the proposal, I promised that the aims of the Environment Bill.
If we're being pedantic, it's 2 words, it's aims of, but don't worry about it.
Right. Councillor Mrs McPherson, are you happy for those changes to be made?
I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, Councillor Ward, can I say we're now speaking on the amendment?
Yes, I'm speaking on the amendment and the bill. I think it doesn't actually change what I want to say anyway. In reality,
okay.
Because we expect the government to shortly publish a planning white paper to set out its ideas and proposals for the future of the planning system. The council's response to this white paper will make clear its desire to see environmental sustainability placed at the heart of the planning system. In practice, this will mean taking measures to ensure that new homes and commercial buildings minimise their use of carbon, not just in construction, but throughout their lifetime, which is where modular build could be promoted, together with ensuring that areas of environmental value are afforded the strongest possible protection throughout the planning system, and looking forward to the NPPF taking the Environment Bill into its very heart. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilkinson, can I remind you, Councillor Wilkinson, that we're debating the amendment as put forward by Councillor Mrs Mason?
Okay, Chairman, I was just going to ask a question regarding the actual motion, as opposed to just the 2 words that were amended. So am I permitted to ask a question about the motion?
Is it to do with the amended?
Oh, it's to do with the now amended motion. I don't think it's changed what I was going to say. No, not at all.
Okay, please carry on then, Mr. Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. This may well be a question for Marcus, actually. I wholeheartedly support this. I think it's a fantastic idea and totally welcome it. Listening to the concerns that have been raised with regards to the timing of the Environment Bill, I think are relevant. My question I was going to ask is, around legislation, sometimes certain parts of legislation trumps others. We're asking for the aims of the Environment Bill to be included within our local plan. Now, my question is, do we have to, when we are devising our new local plan and bringing it about, do we have to stick with what the NPPF says? Or, for example, if the aims of the Environment Bill, even if it was still a bill and not an act, if those aims are at odds with the NPPF, which one trumps, which one wins? Does that make sense?
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
I can clarify if Marcus doesn't understand, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Marcus Houghton, can I ask you to respond to that? If you're able.
Yes, I'll try. I mean, it's a slightly hypothetical question you put together there. I mean, the national planning policy framework would really have the most weight in this situation. But I mean, but in many ways, you know, the bill would, I guess, if there's anything significant within the bill that would alter how planning is to be, if you like, the policies are sort of weighed up, then it'd be reflected in changes to the NPPF anyway, if that makes sense. So what I'm saying is you wouldn't have a nod to the bill. You'd expect the national planning policy framework to have a nod to the Environment Bill in itself. So it's not for us to necessarily shape our policy around that. In that sense, we'd actually look to the national policy of the planning framework to give us the steer. But that's where the weight would be. So in a sense, Councillor Wilkinson has sort of already answered his own question when he put that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cotton. I think that does answer the question. Councillor Hudson. And Councillor Hudson, can I remind you that we are debating the amendment as put forward by Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Thank you. May I ask for the opinion of our MD, Sean Scrutton, who in the past I have spent many happy hours discussing the wording of these things and how it could possibly affect our plans. I would really like his opinion on the proposed wording relative to the preparation of our new local plan. Could it be detrimental in any way? Is there a better form of words? I trust Sean's opinion on that.
Chairman, happy to comment. I see no particular reason why it should be detrimental to the preparation of the local plan. It seems to me that, as Marcus Houghton has indicated, that the Environment Bill will make close reference to the National Planning Policy Framework. I think the government has been lobbied heavily in relation to the contents of the Environment Bill by the RTPI and other relevant planning bodies to ensure that the NPPF will ultimately become modified in a way that reflects the demands and desires of the Environment Bill, should that come into legislation.
Then all is well.
Chairman, you're muted.
Thank you. I can't see anybody else wishing to speak on the amendment. I shall therefore put to the vote the amendment as proposed by Councillor Mrs. Mason. Oh, Councillor Williams, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Just for clarification, as Mrs. McPherson, Councillor Mrs. McPherson is happy to amend her motion, is there a need to vote on the amendment? Just for clarification, please.
Yes. Councillor Williams, I understand, yes, there has been an amendment. We need to vote on that amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So members, I shall put to the vote the amendment as put forward by Councillor Mrs. Mason and seconded by Councillor Mrs. McPherson. And just for clarification, the penultimate paragraph of 1.6 is now amended to read as follows. This council is currently working on preparing a new local plan. I propose that the aims of the Environment Bill is at the centre of this new plan. So we're including the words aims of the. Okay. Members, unfortunately that needs to be done via roll call. If you can indicate whether you wish to have a recorded vote for, against or abstain when I read your name. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Connell.
No and for. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mr. Carter.
No and for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. No and for the amended motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote and for the amendment. Councillor Mr. FD.
No and for.
Councillor Mrs. Gooding.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for the amendment.
Councillor Eaves.
No and for the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hookway.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mr. Hoy.
Sorry, I think you think Mr. Hoy, I think, rather than Hall. No to a recorded vote and for the amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hudson.
No and 4.
Councillor Ionu.
No and 4.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Lumley.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Mason.
No recorded vote, Mr. Chairman, and 4. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. McPherson.
No and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Merrick. Councillor Merrick.
He's out. He's out.
I'll come back to you, Councillor Merrick. Councillor Milne.
No and 4.
Councillor Newport.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Pavlin.
No and 4. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mr. Shaw.
Mrs. Shaw.
Councillor Mrs. Shaw. No and 4.
Councillor Mr. Shaw.
No and 4.
Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote, 4.
Councillor Sperring.
Oh, 4.
Councillor Stanley.
No and 4.
Councillor Steptoe.
No and 4.
Councillor Ward.
No and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Webb.
No and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Mrs. Weston.
No recorded vote and 4, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
No and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Councillor Wilson.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Wootton.
No and 4, Chairman. Thank you.
Chairman, just to let you know that Councillor Merrick appears to be back with us.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. I am indeed.
Chairman, you're muted.
Councillor Merrick, can I have your vote then, please, on the amendment as put forward by Mrs. Christine Mason and seconded by Mrs. McPherson?
Yeah, no and 4, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Merrick. Members will come back. Mrs. Mason, you wish to speak? Mrs. Mason?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's Councillor Mrs. Mason. I believe I owe Councillor Mrs. McPherson an apology. I've just realised the difficulties I have with my computer and the internet and trying to read things off of the screen, which unfortunately our officers can't overcome, is I think I miscounted. I think she was right. It's 3 words. So my apologies. I didn't mean to be inaccurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. The vote is for the amendment, 35 votes for and none against and no recorded vote. Thank you, members. That has been passed. Mrs. McPherson, do you wish to speak on your motion? You reserve the right to do so. The amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. All I would say is thank you very much, councillors. I just made a couple of notes. Councillor Hoy, you mentioned that you did not support that motion earlier under the carbon neutral report. Just a reminder, that could have been amended at review or even earlier this evening as well. And I will extend once more that invitation to join the carbon neutral working group. But thank you all for voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. McPherson.
Sorry, Chairman, may I come back on that?
Very quickly,
Chairman,
Councillor
who
Hoy.
just made that comment? I think that is completely out of order if someone is saying, for God's sake. That's totally unacceptable. And I want to know who said it. Are we not allowed to speak now?
I don't know who said it, Councillor Hoy.
I also heard that comment as well, and it's not acceptable.
Who was that that spoke just now? Councillor Hoy, I agree with your comments, but I cannot at this stage indicate who said those words, and I didn't hear them when they originally spoken. So we shall move on with the agenda.
Sorry, Chair. I was going to say something. Someone said, for God's sake, I understand your point. No one is owning up to it, which I find appalling behaviour by any councillor. I'm not going to participate in this meeting now. People are going to say that to me.
Members, we shall now go on to 1.7 on page 11.3. This is the last notice, motion on notice.
No, Chairman, we need to vote on the motion
Oh, my apologies.
with the amendment. And then we need to.
Members, my apologies. I now need to vote. We now need to vote on the on the motion with the amendments. Okay. Does anybody wish me to read out the amendments again? No. Okay. Right. Again, I shall go through the roll call.
Councillor Cannell. Councillor Cannell. Councillor Cannell.
Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. I believe a point of order, potentially a point of clarification. On two instances in council meetings in the not too distant past, when amendments have been amended, the motion then goes through as an amended motion. For example, the EU motion that was passed in February, there wasn't an opportunity to come back and vote on the motion, its originality. It was then passed as an amended motion. So I'd like clarity on the difference between an amended motion and an amendment to a motion, if I may, please. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cannell, we're struggling to understand exactly your meaning.
Thank you, Chair. I'll rephrase, I guess. The question quite simply is, what is the difference between an amended motion and an amendment to a motion? On previous occasions when opposition members have put forward motions, when it is then voted on pending an amendment, that is then passed as an amended motion. There's not an opportunity to come back and discuss the original motion and vote on that original motion. So it's just a point of clarity on the difference between an amended motion and an amendment to a motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cannell, one thing I would suggest is that Councillor Mrs Mason has suggested a very small change to the original motion as agreed by Councillor, or as put forward by Councillors Macpherson and Gooding. And Councillor Macpherson seconded that very small motion, okay, which had to be voted on as an amendment to the original motion, all right, which was agreed by members unanimously. I can't comment on what had gone on in the past at this stage, but I now need to put forward the motion, the original motion 1.6, with the amendments as agreed by councillors Mrs Mason and Councillor Macpherson, which I shall now do. Members, I hope that's all clear. if I can read your name out, if you can indicate whether you wish to have a recorded vote or vote in for, against or abstain. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
No and for.
Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
No and for, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Cannell. Councillor Cannell.
No recorded votes. It's a difficult one. I wish. I feel like I'm in an untenable position here. Going back to the previous point, is it just the size of the amendment that constitutes whether it's an amendment to a motion or an amended motion? I very much wish to support this item. However, my confusion is giving me doubts as to whether I should indeed abstain.
Councillor Cannell, I think that a fuller explanation can be given after this meeting. If you're not 100% sure, I would suggest you abstain at this stage.
A point of order, please, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mrs. Mason, your point of order.
Point of order is that when an amendment is passed, the original motion is not put. The amended motion is carried. Therefore, you can't put the original motion.
Sorry about this, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Mrs. Mason, you're incorrect. I've actually got the Constitution in front of me, page 4.12. Point D, if an amendment is carried, the motion as amended takes the place of the original motion. This becomes a substantive motion to which any further amendments are moved. Point E, after the amendment has been carried, the chairman will read out the amended motion before accepting any further amendments, or if there are none, put it to the vote, which we are doing now. Thank you.
No, it's the you've misread it. It's the amendments to the vote. I'm sorry, it's a point of order. It's the any other amendments. There are no further amendments. You can't vote for one thing and then vote for something that's different. It's the same thing. It's very similar. We've had it. There's two ways of doing this, and unfortunately, I believe that what you're doing now is totally wrong.
Councillor Mrs.
And it's
Mason.
unconstitutional. We have a monitoring officer who I'm sure. Well, I think I'll give up. Okay.
Councillor Mrs. Mason, we have voted on your amendment, which has been agreed, which is now the substantive motion. And I'm asking members to vote on the substantive motion, which is a motion put forward by yourselves with amendments and agreed by Councillor McPherson. I hope, members, that is clear.
Mr. Chairman, it's already been voted on.
I
Okay.
need to vote again.
Chairman, if I may.
Go on in.
So the motion was originally put forward by Councillor Mrs. McPherson, of which Councillor Mrs. Mason made a slight amendment to one part of the motion. Members then voted to agree to accept that motion, the amendment to the motion, and now that those amendments become part of the substantive motion. Okay?
Exactly what I said.
You cannot amend a motion which negates the original motion. So
okay, no, I accept that. Thank you.
Yes.
To the monitoring officer. I understand what you're saying, but it's certainly not clear. And unfortunately, there has been inconsistencies in the past, which makes it really difficult for this to be clear. So if you want to put it again, that's fine. So we're
Chairman.
Thank you.
So Chairman, I'm still not clear as to Councillor Cannell's question, but if the original mover had amended their own motion, that's prior to the meeting, that's different. But I can take any questions outside of this meeting, after this meeting, from Councillor Cannell.
Thank you. Councillor Cannell, as I said earlier, we will respond to your questions outside of this meeting, but the amended motion with the amendments of Mrs. Christine Mason, agreed by Councillor McPherson, now becomes a substantive motion, and I'm now going to put a vote onto that. When your name is called, please indicate whether you're for, against, or wish to abstain. I shall start again. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
No and 4, thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
No and 4, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. If this wasn't such an important subject matter, I think out of principle, I would be abstaining. However, since that is now on public record, and I do feel this is an important subject matter, I will vote for. I don't require a recorded vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
No and 4, thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. No and abstain.
Councillor Dray, that's myself, no recorded vote and for the motion. Councillor Efty.
No recorded vote and for the motion.
Councillor Eaves.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gooding.
Thank you, Chairman. No recorded vote and for the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
No recorded vote and for the amended motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mr. Hoy is no longer with us, I understand. Councillor Hudson.
No and 4.
Councillor Ionu.
No recorded vote and 4.
Councillor Mr. Lucas Gill.
No and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Mrs. Lumley.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Mason.
No and 4.
Councillor
Thank you.
Councillor Mrs. McPherson.
No and 4, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Merrick.
No and 4.
Councillor Milne.
No and 4.
Councillor Newport.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Paveling.
No and 4, thank you.
Councillor Mrs. Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Councillor Mr. Shaw.
No and 4.
Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote for.
Councillor Sperring.
No for.
Councillor Stanley.
No and 4.
Councillor Steptoe. Councillor
He's on mute,
Steptoe.
Chairman, he's on mute.
Councillor Steptoe, you're on mute.
Sorry, Chairman. No for recorded vote and for the motion. And can I remind you of the time?
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Weston.
No recorded vote and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Wilkinson.
No recorded vote and for the motion, Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
No and 4, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
No and 4.
Councillor Wootton.
No and 4.
Chairman, this is Councillor Hoy. I think you said I left the meeting. I didn't. I dropped out. I would never be so rude as to leave a meeting without advising you. I'm not sure if you called me to vote or not.
Muted, Chairman.
You're muted, Chairman.
Councillor Hoy, do you wish to vote on this item?
Yes, I said I didn't say I wouldn't vote. I said I would not take no part in the discussion.
Can I have your vote then, please?
No for recorded vote and for.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Members, the vote for the substantive motion is been accepted. 34 votes forward, 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Members, the time is 10 o'clock, and as required, I need to put to a vote as to whether members wish to extend the meeting. We have one other motion and 2 other items to go through. So if I can, when I go again, read your name, if you can indicate to me whether you'd like to have a recorded vote for or against, or wish to abstain. Councillor Mrs. Belton.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Cannell.
No and 4.
Councillor Mr. Carter.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Carter.
No and against.
Myself, Councillor Dray, no recorded vote, 4 an extension. Councillor FD.
No and 4.
Councillor Eaves.
No and against.
Councillor Gooding.
No and 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hookway.
No and against.
Councillor Hudson.
No and 4.
Councillor Ionu.
No and 4.
Chairman, I am still here.
Yeah, Councillor.
Sorry, Councillor Hoy. Yeah, my apologies. Councillor Hoy.
No and against. Thank you, Chairman.
Can you go back to Councillor Hudson, please?
Cool.
Councillor Hudson.
Councillor Hudson, please.
I've given my vote, but I'll give it to you again. No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Ionu. Also.
No and 4.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Lumley.
No and against.
Councillor Mrs. Mason.
No recorded vote and against extending the meeting.
Councillor Mrs. McPherson.
No and 4.
Councillor Merrick.
No and 4.
Councillor Milne.
No and 4.
Councillor Newport.
No and against.
Councillor Mrs. Pavlin.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Rowe.
No and 4, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Shaw.
No and 4.
Councillor Mr. Shaw.
No and 4.
Okay. Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote, 4.
Councillor Sperring.
No and against.
Councillor Stanley.
No and against, and I'll bid you good night all.
Councillor Steptoe.
No and 4.
Councillor Ward.
No and 4.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
No and 4.
Councillor Mrs. Weston.
No recorded vote and 4, Chairman.
Councillor Wilkinson.
No and 4, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
No and against. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilson.
No and against.
Councillor Wootton.
Chairman, no and 4, but a point of order, please.
Okay.
At 22:05, I just wonder how valid this vote is.
It's valid. It's valid. It's valid.
Sorry.
Yes, it's valid.
It is valid, Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chairman.
Members, no recorded vote. We will extend to 25 votes for and 10 against. Thank you, members.
Chairman, sorry, I can't sit here any longer. I'm going to have to go. Good night.
Okay. Members, the final motion on notice is relating to inconsiderate parking on footways and grass verges.
Sorry,
This-
Chairman, I've got Councillor Christine Mason and Councillor Williams.
Councillor Mrs Mason, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wish to extend my apologies for the rest of the meeting. I'm afraid I'll have to leave. Thank you.
Who?
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to know how long the extension is for, please.
We'll carry on for as long as we can. I'm going to take the final motion on notice and take a view after that, Councillor Williams.
Thank you.
Move over. Councillor Mrs Carter.
Councillor Mrs Carter.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to apologise that I need to go. I have to get up to go to work in the morning.
Thank you. Councillor Connell.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it won't do anything to the vote that's just taken place. However, I would draw members' attention for the next motion we're going to vote on, that the Constitution on 4.12, 15.6, amendments to motion Part D reads, if an amendment is carried, the motion as amended takes the place of the original motion. This becomes the substantive motion to which any further amendments are moved. I will be seeking clarification regarding the last vote outside of this meeting, but like I said, I appreciate it won't change it. I just wanted members to be aware of it as we go into the discussion for the next motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Connell.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
Councillor Mrs Lumley. Councillor Mrs Lumley.
Councillor Mrs Lumley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say I should be leaving the meeting.
Members, the final motion on notice relates to inconsiderable parking on footways and grass verges as proposed by...
Chair. Sorry to interrupt. I did have my hand up. I'm going to have to leave the meeting, I'm afraid. Apologies.
Thank you. Allow me to continue, please. The final motion on notice relating to inconsiderate parking on footways and grass verges has been proposed by Councillor Mrs Gooding, Mrs Rowe and Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Mrs Gooding, would you please summarise and speak on your motion of notice?
Members, vehicles parked on grass verges and footpaths causing an obstruction for pedestrians. Some of these instances have become a safety issue. Therefore, having sought advice, I would propose a motion to address this, which, if the council were of mind to agree, could be enforced by use of civil powers, and I would like to explore ways of addressing these issues. So my motion reads as follows: inconsiderate parking on footways and grass verges is both antisocial and potentially dangerous for pedestrians and motorists alike. Furthermore, grass verges become churned up and look unsightly, incurring costs to repair. As a result, Rochford District Council is seeking to identify with partners, including Essex County Council Highways and South Essex Parking Partnership, SEP, to explore ways in which traffic regulations can be put in place and enforcement resourced can be made available in order to lessen the problem throughout the Rochford district.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Gooding. Have you a seconder to that motion?
Yes, I have Councillor Rowe, I believe. Oh no, Councillor Steptoe, apologies.
Chairman, yes, I'm happy to second that motion. May I speak at this point?
You may, Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. This is something that I feel quite passionately about. Where we live in our particular district, we have areas within our district that have very narrow footpaths. I speak about my ward in particular, but I'm sure this also applies to many other areas within our district. Here in Barling, for example, we have very, very narrow footpaths, and in a lot of cases, they're only on one side of the road. Some of the footpaths are only just wide enough for a single person to walk along at any one time, yet alone somebody with a buggy. I quite regularly go out of an evening, and I can see, in particular, there is a lady that sadly is in a wheelchair. And the number of times that I have to see her go out into the road to move round a parked vehicle into the main road through Barling. Okay, there's not a heavy traffic usage here, but that's not the point. The same applies really when you look at Rochford town itself. Rochford town is a medieval town. The footpaths there are not the best in the world. They're not particularly wide. And of course, the continuation of footpath parking just simply damages the footpaths. It makes them that much more difficult, particularly for people that are blind. I'm currently dealing with a lady that lives in Rochford who has terrible trouble walking along the footpaths in Rochford because of the damage that is caused by parked vehicles with her guide dog. With regards to parking on grass verges, in some cases this does not necessarily cause an obstruction. But you have to remember, Chairman, the Rochford District Council spends some £300,000 a year on cutting the grass verges. It is made that much more difficult if they are churned up and have parked vehicles on them when they're due to be cut. And in some cases, that can mean that they miss that particular cut and the vehicle is moved, and of course, it looks terrible. We spend a lot of money as a district council to actually make sure that our district looks clean and tidy. Chairman, the problem has always stemmed from the attitude from the police in dealing with obstruction. It is a low-level issue for them, and I'm not knocking them at all. They've got far more important things to do. But it would make sense that the traffic wardens that come from South East Essex Parking Partnership would have the power, where there is not a traffic order in place, to be able to issue tickets. Currently, the legal legislation throughout the UK, except I believe London, doesn't actually allow this. There has been some discussions, considerable discussions, within the South Essex Parking Partnership and with its fellow parking partnership from the north of the county to discuss with and how we can get around this particular issue. It is very important that we do protect our footpaths, we do protect our grass verges, and stop this inconvenience of when children have to walk to school, and we're all encouraging them to do that. And for people that are disabled and people with buggies and what have you, to be able to use the footpaths along the sides of the roads to their full extent. Sorry, Chairman, I've gone on a little bit there, but as you can see, I feel quite passionate about this particular issue.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion. The one concern that I've got is that I know that in London it's illegal to park on the pavement or the footway. And I just wondered whether or how, I know that Councillor Steptoe just mentioned it, but is there any way of having some sort of local bylaw that would prevent this? I'd ask that perhaps for the legal officer.
So, what was the question there?
Councillor Steptoe, would you like to come back on that point?
Actually, Chairman, I can probably come back on that point as being the liaison now with South East Essex Parking Partnership.
Councillor Efty, thank you.
The Parking Partnership has recently been involved and I think concluded a period of consultation allowing local authorities to adopt the same powers that are currently held within the London boroughs, whereas under civil powers an offence can be created prohibiting vehicles from parking on footpaths. So I think that has been addressed. I think that is being addressed by the South East Essex Parking Partnership of how they're going to implement it. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Councillor Efty. Councillor Mrs. Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to bring this motion forward too. I have more emails about inconsiderate parking than anything else from my residents. And I totally support everything that's been said by my colleagues, Councillors Goodin and Steptoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Rowe. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. No, I fully support what's been said. There's no doubt within Rayleigh and my own ward of Lodge, which have lots of verges that have to be cut and such like. A lot of them have been churned up by inconsiderate parking on them. We know we do have narrow roads, but you know, people can get by. We also have quite a lot of disabled people who are being forced into the road on their buggies because they can't get by. And one of the questions I would like to ask in regards to this, with regard to enforcement, will photographic evidence, because bearing in mind resources are going to be difficult to find, will photographic evidence be acceptable if someone sees a car parked on the pavement, and if that evidence can be taken into consideration, or has it got to be an enforcement officer actually physically seeing it and giving a ticket at the time? That would be my question. Thank you.
Councillor Efty, can you answer that or respond to that?
Thank you, Chairman. I've just written that down from Councillor Ward about photographic evidence. I'm going to have to explore that with with SEP when on the first meeting. It'll be one of my questions. So hopefully I will keep you informed when I get some sort of answer.
Thank you,
Chairman. I may be able to help Councillor Efty on this particular point.
Okay.
Yeah, Chairman, South Essex Parking Partnership were looking at improving their equipment by having a camera vehicle. I believe they have one currently working in Basildon, and hopefully that will be enabled to be moved around to various districts. And they were also looking at evidence where the wardens, as they go around, don't necessarily have to take photographs or what have you. They can just simply use the registration number and issue a ticket on that basis.
Can I come back on that, please, Chairman? Just to clarify my question. My question with regard to that was members of the public who have a mobile phone, the same as they're able to take various highway issues and photograph them. You know, I would hope, you know, we are limited on resources. They may have a mobile vehicle in Basildon that's going around and such like, but they can't be everywhere. But of course, residents are everywhere and most of them have a mobile phone. Surely this can be used as evidence of something that is happening. Thank you.
Could I quickly come back on that, Mr. Chair?
Sorry?
Could I just quickly come back on that, Mr. Chairman? I did catch that with Ian about the members of the public taking the photos, and I will bring that up at SEP.
Thank you, Councillor Efty. Councillor Wootton.
Thank you, Chair. Can I say I fully support Councillor Judy Gooding for bringing this motion forward. It's a pet hate of mine. And can I fully, in the interest of time, associate myself totally with the comments of Councillor Steptoe. I think he summed up exactly my views perfectly. I agree with him in every single word that he said. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wootton. Councillor Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. I fully support this motion. One of the problems is the enforcement resource. Outside the horse and groom, there's a verge there, which is actually a clearway. Cars are parked on there daily. The weekend, there was 3 or 4 cars parked on there. There was also cars parked on the pavement. Now, they could have actually all been fined because, as I say, it's a clearway, but we haven't got the resources to do anything about it. Until we get the resources, we're not going to get anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Connell.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points on this. First of all, an apology for my demeanour over the last 10 minutes. Taking into consideration Councillor FD's points around the Constitution, I do believe the vote was proper, and I'm glad I did not abstain. However, I do seek clarity outside of this meeting for what has gone on in previous meetings. With regards this issue, the first point is a follow-up to Councillor Ward's. Outside of the council, I have a full-time job. One of those building mobile apps, apologies. One of the mobile apps we built was an app called Go Park. One of the things we looked to do here was clarify enforcement and seek to use members of the public to take photos for the sake of enforcement. However, the law currently doesn't allow that. That project I was involved in maybe 14 months ago. The law may have changed since then. However, I'm not aware that it has. I hope that helps members. With regards the motion itself, I support the sentiment behind this. I agree it's a pet peeve, and I know, for example, in Rayleigh, the Tesco Express has had problems with this, which has led to bollards going up. And I do also get resident complaints on this matter. I note, obviously, the motion looks to work with others, which could potentially curb our influence on this. So I'm wondering if this is the best way to deal with what is a very serious problem and one that we're all experiencing, and see if there are ways we as a council could explore this. For example, do all of the grass verges need to be grass? Could we have, foot-high hedges that are not parkable on, for example, which doesn't need involvement from other partners, I believe. I'm happy to be corrected on that. And also kind of secondary reasoning behind that, it goes hand in hand with some of the initiatives we've been discussing this evening about carbon neutrality. In some of the London boroughs, they have found that having these type of hedgerows on roadside actually absorbs some of the carbon coming from exhaust pipes. So I do support the sentiment behind this motion. I'm just unclear at the moment if pursuing enforcement is the best way to deal with this matter. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Connell. In particular, I thank you with regards to your comments on the previous item. Councillor Mr. Lucas Gill.
Thank you, Chairman. Being a very old town or village as it was, a lot of our roads are so narrow, like my road, for instance, you've got parking all the way down. Visitors come, they park on the verge. Delivery vehicles come, they park on the verge. There's nowhere else for them to go. It is a bad situation, but if the grass verges were taken away from the paths, the road would be wider and it would help. But that is a very serious and expensive project, I think. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas Gill. Councillor FD.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on this, I'm of a mind, we've been the representative now to the South East Essex Partner Partnership to ask the question. Sorry to repeat myself a little bit. Okay, the department, what I'm thinking about asking them is the Department of Transport has recently concluded a period of consultation allowing local authorities to adopt powers that are currently held within London boroughs, whereas under civil powers, and it is an offence can be created prohibited vehicles from parking on footpath. How is the South East Essex Partnering Partnership working with its partners to create these civil powers that can be enforced by SEP, helping to prevent antisocial and dangerous behaviour of drivers? I'm going to ask that question at the next meeting, and I will keep members updated on what's happening with that. So hopefully that might help a little bit going forward. And I really embrace Councillor Clennell's points with the carbon putting bushes and stuff on the verges, and maybe that's something you should take up with the Carbon Neutral Working Party for the future, and I think that's a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor FD. Councillor Smith.
Chairman, there's a lack of care and consideration in a lot of aspects of life in our community. Clearly, to deal with a situation like that, this enforcement is the last step. We should be educating, we should be using polite words and gentle reminders, but we have done that. Now it is regretfully time for action, and I'm wholeheartedly in support of this move. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just to come back on Councillor Connell's point of hedges and along the grass verges, you need to bear in mind that the vast number of our green edges are also sight lines for junctions and people going along the road. The addition of actually having small hedges or hedges along those particular areas would fall upon us to maintain those. As I've already said, just simply cutting the grass throughout the whole district costs this district something in the region of £300,000 a year. If you've then got to add into that the cost of actually cutting hedges 2-3 times a year, I think that would perhaps put it a little bit out of our reach. But I do take his point that is perhaps a softer approach of actually discouraging people to do. I also will pick up on Councillor Smith's point that yes, we do need to educate our drivers, but sometimes we need to educate them through a little bit of a stick so they do understand that parking on grass verges and particularly pavements and blocking the pavement is a big no-no. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. Councillor Connell again.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Steptoe, for the follow-up. I may have misunderstood. I do take on board the comments about cost, although I think the cost would be instead of cutting the grass, as the grass would no longer need cutting if there's a hedge on top of it. With regard to Councillor Smith's comments, I wholeheartedly agree. Education first. I haven't had the pleasure of serving as long as other members on this call today, so I'm not aware of all of the education routes we've gone down. I'll take upon myself to educate myself on those routes. But at the moment, I feel like going through enforcement based on the picture I have at the moment may be over the top. Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Connell. I cannot see anybody else indicating to speak.
Councillor Gooding needs to sum up.
Councillor Gooding, do you wish to sum up?
I would just like to thank all the councillors for the support on this motion, and I take on board the points that you've made regarding other options, and that is why I suggested we explore all these other options before we take the action that we propose here, if I have your support. And I'd like to move the motion, please.
Thank you, Councillor Gooding. It's already been seconded. Members, There are no amendments to the motion, so I shall put the original motion to the vote as proposed by Councillor Gooding and seconded by Councillor Mrs Rowe. Members, I shall call out your name again. If you please indicate whether you like a recorded vote or to voting for, against or to abstain. I'm not sure exactly who is still with us, but I shall read out all of the names on my list. Councillor Mrs Belton.
No recorded for the motion.
Councillor Mrs Butcher.
No recorded vote and for the motion, thank you.
Councillor Cannell.
No recorded vote required. I thank Councillors Gooding, Rowe and Steptoe for bringing this forward. I do, like I say, agree with the sentiment. However, on this occasion, I vote against. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mr Carter.
No and for.
Councillor Mrs Carter, I don't think she's with us. Myself, no recorded vote and for. Councillor Efty.
No recorded vote, and I'm going to abstain on this just because I'm on the South East Essex Parking Partnership.
Thank you. Councillor Eaves.
No recorded vote and for. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gooding.
No recorded vote and for the motion, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hookway.
No recorded vote and for the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
Just checking.
Councillor Mr Hoy.
Chairman, I think he's had problems with his internet.
Councillor Hudson.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Ionu.
No and for.
Councillor Lucas Gill.
No and for.
Councillor Mrs Lumley.
She's gone.
She's gone. Councillor Mrs Mason has gone. Councillor Mrs Macpherson.
No recorded vote and for. Thank you.
Councillor Merrick.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Milne.
No and for.
Councillor Newport.
No, it's gone.
She's gone. Councillor Mrs Pavlin.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Councillor Mrs Shaw.
No and for.
Councillor Mr Shaw.
No and for.
Councillor Smith.
No recorded vote for.
Councillor Sperring.
He's gone.
She's gone. Councillor Stanley.
Did he leave?
He's gone.
Councillor Stanley has left, Chair.
Not there.
Councillor Steptoe.
No and for.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
No and for, Chairman.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. No and for.
Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote and for, Chairman.
Sorry.
Councillor Mrs Weston.
No recorded vote and for, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
No and for, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
No and for, thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilson.
No and for.
Councillor Wootton. Thank you, members.
26.
Members, no recorded vote. 26 members were for the motion, 1 abstention, 1 against. So that's carried. Thank you, members.
Chairman, I think there's 2 abstentions. Chairman, I think there was 2 extensions, Cannell and FD.
For clarity, Chair, I was against.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Yes, you was, okay.
No worries,
Members.
Councillor. Honest mistake.
I'm aware of the time, but I'd like to carry on with item 12, Billy Chip scheme. I would like Councillor Webb, please, to give us a verbal update.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, happy to do that. So council officers have looked into the Billy Chip scheme along with another proposal that our partners Chess and Chelmsford City Council were considering introducing called the Tap and Give scheme. This alternative scheme allowed the public to tap and give through an organisation called Greater Change, who use all the funds to pay for items that are needed to break the cycle of homelessness. Both schemes have positives, but to date neither Chelmsford or Rochford have sought to implement either scheme. This will be reviewed in the future, but the main reason for this is that the one positive outcome of the coronavirus period has been the strength of the government desire to keep rough sleepers off the street and in accommodation. In Rochford District, the housing team picked up 10 rough sleepers through the emergency coronavirus public health guidance, and I'm pleased to say that all of these were accommodated and remain in accommodation. Although the housing team were aware of one entrenched rough sleeper, the others that were supported came under the new public health emergency definition of rough sleepers and were not entrenched rough sleepers, but hidden homeless, for example, those sleeping on a sofa that were staying with friends or family. Because of this progress, the urgency of developing either the Billy Chip scheme or the Tap and Give scheme has not been so pressing, as all the known rough sleepers in our district are housed. This is not to say that in the future others may become visible on our streets and we will then need to consider these schemes, but I do hope that schemes like this will continue to be less needed as we succeed in our commitment to end all rough sleeping locally. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Webb. Councillor Mr. Carter.
Yeah, apologies, Chairman, but I've got an early start, so I'll have to leave the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. Likewise, I'm going to have to leave the meeting due to the lateness.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Members, does anybody else wish to speak on this item? Members, there are no members indicating they wish to speak. Is that noted, members? And I will confirm that on the assumption of your agreement, unless anyone clicks on the raised hand icon.
Right, so that's noted.
There is no such raised icons. That, members, has been agreed and noted. Thank you. Members, I'll quickly go on to item 13, CCT Working Group. And again, Councillor Webb will introduce this item. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I am pleased to present this report to you. Can I particularly thank Andy Parkman for collating the large amount of information and talking us through it so well before putting together this final report. Can I also extend my thanks to the members of the cross-party working group that consisted of Councillor Butcher, Councillor Eaves, Councillor Milne and Councillor Wilkinson for their support and insight over the last 9 months as we met together many times and looked at this serious issue. I intend to say a few words before handing over to Andy to take us through the bulk of the material, and then the members of the working group will cover in more detail some of the key aspects of our work. During this time as a working group, we have been presented with a vast array of information, carried out a successful district-wide consultation, which had over 650 responses, and we also spent a day visiting a CCTV demonstration showroom. The data that Andy will take us through contains some interesting statistics. However, one key highlight that I would like to draw members' attention to is on page 13.3, section 2.6. Here we see that Rochford has the lowest rate of recorded crime per 1,000 population of any district in Essex. This, as I'm sure members will agree, is something that we should be very proud of. However, from the work, we did identify 2 wards within the district that we felt would benefit from CCTV. These were Wheatley Ward, primarily in Rayleigh High Street, and Roach South Ward in and around Rochford Town Centre. It is also felt that a mobile CCTV unit as a resource for the district would be beneficial. As a working group, we have enclosed estimated costs for this work in the report. However, they are not full costings, as we have not yet looked at the exact location of the cameras within each ward, and this may very well increase the overall cost. As a working group, we agreed that it was time to update the council on our work to date and to advise members of the future work that is needed before a fully costed scheme can be presented to members. However, I would reiterate that, on balance, looking at the evidence and taking into account the results of the consultation, we would be keen to see CCTV installed in Rayleigh High Street, Rochford Town Centre, as well as a mobile CCTV provision that can be used across the district. Thank you, members. I will now hand over to Andy Parkman to take us through the full report.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Mr. Parkman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Webb. I think it's a useful overview of the work that's been undertaken.
Mr. Parkman, we can. Mr. Parkman, can I interrupt you for a second? We can't hear you very well, I'm afraid. You're not coming over at all. I don't know if it's me. Can anybody else hear him okay?
Can't hear him at all.
You can try turning off
No,
his
we
video,
can't hear him,
Chairman.
Chairman, it's
No.
awful.
Can't hear a word.
Anything.
Can you try again, Mr. Parkman? Thank you.
Let's turn off his video, it might help.
Have you got any devices to switch on?
Mr. Parkman, can you try again for us?
Yeah, you can see he's connecting. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Chairman, will it help if Andy Parkman takes his video off?
Councillor McPherson, can you repeat that, please?
Would it help if Andy turns his video off?
I don't think he can hear us because it says he's connecting.
Mr. Parkman, can you hear me?
No. No.
Chairman, the other members of the working group have also been asked to speak on the update to full council. Perhaps we, if appropriate, they could introduce their sections, if that's okay.
Okay. Councillor Milne next. Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr.
Before
Chairman.
Councillor Milne comes in, could I suggest to Andy that we had this problem in one of our working groups before, and he swaps to other equipment that did work a lot better, rather than using the council equipment.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. That might not
Chair,
help us this
excuse me,
evening.
this is Councillor Laureen Shaw. I'm going to have to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Milne, would you like to give us your report?
I mean, as I was double-hatted at the beginning of all of this with Rayleigh Town Council, I've been impressed with the work of the group and with Andy. His research has been meticulous and completely agree with the findings. And of course, where the risks are in population centres, which is Rochford and of course Rayleigh. From that point of view, I think they're putting together a nice informative case for the council to consider. And from that point of view, I mean, personally, I'm in favour of it all. And I think I'd like to thank them all for all the work they've done, and particularly Mike Wilkinson, actually, for getting the ball rolling. So there's where we're at the moment, particularly being part of a parish council, the town council. We're awaiting, obviously, the outcome at Rochford to then see how we can, if they decide to move forward, the practicalities of exactly that. So I'd just like to thank everyone, and particularly Mick Webb as well, because he's held it all together. And they've embraced new technology, and they've actually done quite a good job. So I don't want to take anything away from Andy, because Andy's got all of the more technical details. I'd just like to thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Eaves, would you like to comment on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's been quite a privilege to be part of this, and so I welcome the opportunity to be part of this working group. I was going to speak about the site visit that we did to Dahu UK over in Maidenhead. 6 of the members of the group went over there to view the demo suite that they have over there. Dahu are one of the major manufacturers and suppliers of CCTV these days. One of the reasons of being why I wanted to actually have do a quick presentation on this one was that I wasn't aware, and I'm not sure if many of the other members are aware of the standard of the equipment and what it can do now. What we will have been used to in the past will be grainy pictures appearing on Crime Watch and sort of things like that, where the technology has moved on massively since then. We were shown equipment that nowadays, where in the past you would have had to have had, as a result of an incident, an officer or someone sitting in front of a CCTV monitor and trawling through hours and hours of tape. What you can do now, the equipment can actually filter out to be looking for, let's say, for instance, someone with a dress, someone with a red top, someone holding an umbrella, someone with a hat, someone with a bag. All those things can be filtered in. And so actually finding perpetrators or people you want of interest that come up from CCTV can actually be identified very, very quickly. So one of the areas that we were presented with, which Andy made very clear, is that it's in being able to bring prosecutions where the usefulness of the CCTV will be. So I would strongly recommend, as Bob has already said, that we do follow through to the next stage on this, being mindful of the quality of CCTV that there is these days is massively better, and that the resource it can add to safety and policing of the specific areas that it would be allocated to would be quite significant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves, very helpful. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have some concerns, and perhaps I should note non-pecuniary interest in this, being a chairman of Rochford Parish Council. We did look at this sometime, and this system does seem to be reactive. In Rayleigh, it's not too bad. If you have a problem in Rayleigh, the police station is up the road where officers are. If there's a problem, they can be there. In Rochford, most of the officers come from Canvey. By the time they get there, the issue is over or move somewhere else. So I do have grave concerns about whether or not this would work in the Rochford parish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Ionu.
Sorry, Chairman, just point of order, please. There are two other members of the working group who are expecting to speak as well before we go to questions, if that's okay. Sorry, Councillor Butcher, Councillor Wilkinson, that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, in that case, I shall go straight to Councillor Butcher, then to Councillor Wilkinson. I won't forget you, Councillor Ionu. Councillor Mrs. Butcher.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I just want to reiterate what has already been said about the group, the working group. We visited many places and found out a lot of information. And the thing that impressed me was the technology that is available. But I was much more impressed with the mobile unit as well, because with a mobile unit, it can benefit the whole of the district, because it can move around wherever it is needed. And there may be a problem in a particular area, and we often have this, that there is antisocial behaviour in an area and it gets moved on. Well, if you've got a mobile unit, the mobile unit can move on as well. And you know, that was very, very impressive. I understand that there's been fly tippers have been dealt with because of these mobile units. But technology is advancing rapidly with this, and I was very, very impressed with it. So we all started with an open mind, but I think particularly with the residents' views, which was they came out very much in support of having CCTV, and it's the residents that we're working for, and I think that we've got to really look at going for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the previous comments. I'd like to put on record my thanks to Councillor Webb for the way in which he's taken this project forward, and is the open cross-party way in which he's done this, and there's been no party politics in this whatsoever. We're just on the same page, open-minded, as Councillor Butcher says, trying to do the right thing. And it's been an absolute privilege to be part of this group. And it's interesting actually to have heard Councillor Williams before I've had a chance to speak, because I could probably answer some of his points, because what's important with this is to recognise that this isn't Rochford District Council trying to inflict CCTV on anybody, and I'm sure that's not what Councillor Williams is trying to suggest. We've looked at this holistically as from the district points of view, rather than from parish to parish, to see, you know, if there is a need, if there is a demand, if there is a justification, and where that may be. And as Councillor Webb has already alluded to, those two primary areas are Rochford and Rayleigh. And it's very, very important to the working group that we work with the parish stroke town councils of those respective areas. And in actual fact, the invitation has already been extended to those particular councils for one of their members to come and join us on the working group, so that we can formulate this together, because this is about us all working together, you know, to make sure that the system that we get for Rayleigh is fit for Rayleigh, the system that we get for Rochford is fit for Rochford, and it'd be wrong of us to exclude our partners within the parish and town councils for that. Now, I'm not going to speak for Councillor Webb at all, or for the working group as a whole, but I'm sure that they would agree with me that, you know, if on working with Rochford District, with Rochford Parish Council rather, ultimately it transpires that there isn't a need, or they don't perceive there to be a need, then that may be a view that's taken by the working group that we don't need to put anything there. And I'm sure that will assist financially as well. But you know, it would be wrong of the group to have ignored any part of the district, and that hasn't happened. And I'd just like to reiterate my thanks to Councillor Webb, Chairman, for the way in which he's led this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Ionu.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to bring up a non-pecuniary interest of being chairman of the Rochford Chamber of Trade. I commend all members in the working party, including Councillor Webb, for engaging across the cross parties and bringing this to a point where we can go to a phase 2, where we can actually implement this in both the wards. One of the points which I'd like to raise is with regards to another group, which hasn't been mentioned, is the Chamber of Trades, both in Rayleigh and Rochford, whether those two chambers will be involved in the second phase in providing business input in whether they can actually support this scheme, as well as bringing up their concerns on the CCTV, whether they do require CCTV or not. So that is one question which I'd like to pose to Councillor Webb. But from my perspective as Chairman of Rochford Chamber of Trade, I can confirm that speaking to businesses within the Rochford area, they're in total support of the CCTV, but would like representation onto the working party in phase 2, and whether that can be confirmed. Many thanks.
Councillor Webb, can you respond to those two questions, please?
Yeah, thank you for your kind comments, Councillor Ionu. Absolutely, we do need to get the Chamber of Commerce and Trade involved. I understand that you're already linked in with the Rayleigh Town Council and Rochford Parish Council, so perhaps representation will be best made to those bodies who will be invited to join the working group. Absolutely, as Councillor Wilkinson has outlined, we very much need to be working with the Parish and Town Council to discuss with them their findings, and to make sure that if this project does get taken forward, then it's done in the best way possible that meets the needs of our residents. So I would ask that if you can speak to the Parish and Town Council to make sure that you're linked in with them, and then absolutely we do need to hear the views of the businesses and what they want as well. I hope that's okay, Councillor Ionu.
Thank you, Councillor Webb.
Thank you very much, Councillor Webb, that you answered my questions.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. In the past, I worked at the Home Office on a number of projects to do with CCTV and automatic number plate recognition systems. I've got a couple of issues really. I'm not against this at all. But what I'd like to know is how would a Rochford district system tie in with things like the wider Home Office initiatives and police force operations is the first thing. And who would be responsible for tasking where these mobile units go? Would that be Rochford District Council? Would it be the police? And I note what Chief Inspector Miles says in the report, which is good. But if it was that imperative, would not the police be funding this? And finally, it is a point and it's a concern that I've seen, certainly in Holbridge, where there is CCTV that's operated by the parish council, but unfortunately, by the time these incidents have happened, there's no police there to enforce it. So that would be a concern.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilson. I think one of the things that we learned from the away day that we had was the technology that is there. And in some sense, it depends on how much we want to spend on the type of cameras that we get. For example, some would be more than capable of actually carrying out a number plate recognition. That's part of the capability there. But then you're looking at a more expensive system to do that. So that's part of what we're thinking in terms of phase 2, is actually looking at the spec of the cameras and what is needed for each individual area. In terms of the mobile CCTV, I think that would also need to be looked at in terms of how we would respond to an area. I know from brief conversations that there's been discussions at some of the parish councils in terms of supporting an investment in CCTV, a mobile CCTV unit. And then there'll be a conversation that would be had, I would presume, with Andy Parkman, liaising with parish councils in terms of where there was a hotspot area that would benefit from CCTV. And then that will be a discussion that will be had as to when they'll be able to use the equipment. And if other members of the working group have any other views or comments, please feel free to chip in. Hopefully that does answer the question, though.
A point of order, Chairman. We're coming up to 11 o'clock. How long do you think the remainder of this report will take, and then the vote subsequently, which I believe is just for noting? Can you give us an idea, please, on timings? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Webb. I have 5 more members who wish to speak on this item. I will allow those 5, no more, then I shall take the vote. And can I ask the future speakers to be succinct and quick in what they say, please, bearing in mind the time. Councillor McPherson.
I will be quick.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm going to have to leave this meeting now. Thank you.
I'm also going to have to leave. Sorry, Chairman.
Likewise, Chairman. I do apologise.
Sorry, it's Councillor Carol Pavlin.
Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, I will be very quick. I too should say a non-pecuniary interest, as I'm Deputy Chairman at Rochford Parish Council. However, I disagree with my equally wonderfully lovely chairman there, and I do think this is a good idea. Cameras have moved on. The cameras that we used to use years ago were a waste of time. These can be good. I get what Councillor Wilson is saying, that the police should be paying for them, but let's be honest, the police have not got the funds for this, and it won't be one of their priorities. But looking at the report, and I think it's page 13 something, the 91% of respondents felt that the presence of a public CCTV system would make their town safer. 90.3% of respondents felt that CCTV represented a good use of public money. So they're making the choice here. And I think it's a good idea. I like the idea of mobile units. I can see parishes then contributing to them, because obviously if they've got a problem, they could probably try and have one of the units. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. On the whole, I support this motion, but just a word of caution. Facial recognition. We've got 5 million cameras, around 5 million cameras installed in the UK. We need to keep a good eye on this, make sure it doesn't start going into our civil liberties. It's getting late, and that's my 2 penny for it. Thank you.
Councillor Cannell.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and be brief. Forgive me. Another good example of collaboration cross-party, bringing a good report to full council. So thank you for everyone involved. The points I wish to make are surrounding 2.2 on 13.1, as I believe them potentially missing the idea of helping in prosecution. So I would just ask Councillor Webb or any members of the working group if this was considered, and if so, if there are any reasons why it was dismissed. And then also to pay our attention to section 5 that starts on 13.12, continues on to 13.13. We would take on some responsibilities, and if we don't think this is going to reduce crime, as the report states, and we're not sure we have all of the resources to aid once crime has been detected, is the trade-off worth it with regards to taking on those legal responsibilities? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Webb, can you respond to those questions?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So issue of prosecutions was raised, and certainly if CCTV was installed in the district, we'll be looking to make sure that we're working with police colleagues that they would have access to the footage and that they would be able to use them in a court case. In terms of the level of impact on crime, I mean, we looked through a vast amount of data. It is very difficult to discern exactly the benefits of CCTV. Some studies would show that there's a greater benefit than others, but also we were looking at the needs of the residents and the public reassurance. And as Councillor Macpherson has outlined, 650 responses to a consultation is one of the best that we've had as a council. And if you look at the number of people that actually want CCTV, it's 96–97%. And they also agree that it's a good use of public funding. So I think on balance, when we take those two items and we weigh them, I think we say there is an argument that actually it will reduce crime, and actually there's an argument, a very strong argument, that our public will get some strong reassurance from that as well. If other members of the working group want to chip in, please feel free to, but I hope that gives you some reassurance.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure if members are aware, but we already do have number plate recognition cameras in Rochford. They are installed and run by the police, and they've managed to catch quite a few motorists without taxed insurance. I'm not sure if Rayleigh has the same. I can confirm that up until today, Rochford Parish Council have not received an invitation to join this working group. I'm not against having CCTV, and even if it doesn't work, just the camera will be a deterrent, I suspect. But I will support the motion, and I hope it does make a big difference. But as I said before, I do have my doubts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, and Councillor Wilkinson will be the last speaker on this item. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Very quickly, just to answer a point raised by Councillor Wilson. He makes a very good point, and it was a concern of ours as well, with regards to he's mentioned about the cameras in Holbridge and the lack of police response. There are two potential police responses to CCTV to incidents. One is an immediate, so if something's happening, it's being viewed on the camera, and the police turn up. That's becoming less likely as police resources become thinner. The second, of course, is one which I was involved in, which was after the fact. And when you're investigating a serious crime, CCTV is one of the first ports of call, and you can go back and retrieve evidence that way. So it's a two-pronged attack. So there are many ways of trying to get it. So it's not just an immediate police response. I hope that answers the question. Thank you,
Chair, if I may.
Councillor Cannell, I'm sorry that was the last speaker. You have spoken on this item. I'm now going to go to the two recommendations. We have two recommendations set out on paragraph 7.1 on page 13.13 of the report. One is that the work undertaken by the CCTV working group to date be noted. 2, that it is noted that further work is required to scope the location, stroke number, stroke specification of any proposed cameras and their associated cost. Is that noted, members? I will assume agreement unless anyone clicks on the raised hand icon. That is noted, members. That concludes the business of this meeting. I thank you for your patience and forbearance for the second meeting running. And I close the meeting at 11:12 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good
Thank
night,
you,
Chairman.
Thank you,
councillors.
Good night, everyone.
Hi guys, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
Wow, that was